Chapter 689. It was clear that he had also thought of this, which was why his face was so pale. Teacher Su. The Holy Emperor's voice resounded through the hall. Replying to Your Majesty, this lowly subject truly did mention the Secretary Department to the Fifth Prince a few days ago. Replying to Your Majesty, this lowly subject truly did mention the Secretary Department to the Fifth Prince a few days ago. Grand Tutor? Replying to Your Majesty, of the 24 people in the Secretary Department, there is truly no one called Chun Wenxiao. Grand Tutor Chun Yong seriously replied after some thought. In terms of erudition, no one could surpass the Grand Tutor, and no one could surpass the Grand Tutor in understanding of the officials and the bureaucracy of the court. If even the Grand Tutor said that there was no one called Chun Wenxiao in the Secretary Department, then there definitely wasn't one. It was clear that Third Prince Li Ju understood this point, causing his face to instantly turn even paler. Third brother. Not far below the main hall, the first Prince Li Ying and the second Prince Li Yao looked at Li Ju in unison. Their expressions were extremely ugly. The Grand Tutor's words were fatal to Li Ju. Imperial Father, if even the name of an important official on this list is fake, and this person doesn't even exist, how can we convince others that this list is real? And if it was really written by this son, how could this mistake have been made? Li Heng straightened his back, his eyes gleaming, his expression even more relaxed. So, Heng, you mean to say that all of this was forged? In the hall, the sage emperor's voice grew much gentler. Yes, although this letter is very similar to this son, and the forger truly did put in a lot of effort, there is still a significant difference between this son's handwriting and this son's. As long as this son's previous writings are produced, both Teacher Su and the Grand Tutor should be able to tell at a glance. Li Heng sternly said. The hall was quiet as all eyes turned to Li Heng's teacher Su Xiao. Your Majesty, I do have a lot of the Fifth Prince's calligraphy. You can have someone go to my study to get it. We will know if it's real or fake. Su Xiao lowered his head and respectfully bowed. Very soon, a golden armored guard in the main hall received the order and left. After about 5 minutes, he returned to the main hall with a thick stack of scrolls. Soon, all the teachers of the princes were summoned and gathered in front of the stack of scrolls and the name list. Your Majesty, this handwriting is indeed very similar to the Fifth Prince's, but the style of the handwriting is still quite different. In other words, the name list of the Fifth Prince's letters is indeed fake. After a long time, Grand Tutor Chun Yong finally raised his head from the thick stack of calligraphy and made the final decision. Your Majesty, I agree. These are definitely not the Fifth Prince's handwriting. Grand Preceptor Pei Guangting also chimed in. In other words, the second letter from the secretary, including Henry's reply, are all fake? The Holy Emperor's majestic voice rang out in the hall. That's right. Grand Tutor Chun Yong and Grand Preceptor Pei Guangting said simultaneously. In an instant, countless pairs of eyes turned to look at the third prince Li Ju. When those eyes, which were as dignified as a god's, landed on Li Ju's face turned ashen. His body went limp, and he trembled as he knelt on the ground. Your Highness, how is it? When Fifth Prince Li Heng left the main hall of Perpetual Fortune Palace, Li Jingzhong immediately rushed forward, his heart burning with anxiety. He had been waiting outside for a very long time. Alas, not even the personal eunuch who had accompanied the Fifth Prince for 10 some years had the right to enter the hall. Thus he could only wait outside. Li Heng had only been in the Eternal Blessing Palace for a short while, but Li Jingzhong had already circled the hall several hundred times. His cloud-tread shoes almost worn out. What do you think? Li Heng did not directly answer, but grinned as he looked at Li Jingzhong. Li Jingzhong froze for a moment, and then he smiled, revealing his yellow teeth. The fact that the Fifth Prince could be so confident and calm was enough to explain the problem. Third brother is truly too clever for his own good. He thinks that he can harm me, but he doesn't know that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. By doing this, he's only harming himself. Li Heng raised his robe, his youthful face exuding a profound bearing that did not match his age. When he thought of how his father had looked at Li Li's ashen face, Li Heng felt an indescribable sense of joy. Third Prince Li Ju framed his brother with ulterior motives, violating filial piety. He is hereby stripped of his position as prince and handed over to the imperial clan court for punishment. Yao Zongping failed to discipline his disciple. He will be punished with a year's salary, stripped of his scholarly title, and forever barred from taking a single step into the imperial palace. Although in the past, when he encountered this sort of situation, he would usually avoid it, lowering his head and admitting defeat. But this time, third Prince Li Ju had gone too far. He had actually tried to frame Li Jingzhong for forming a faction for personal gain and colluding with ministers to completely strip him of his position as prince and deprive him of the right to fight for the throne of the true dragon. Since this was the case, Li Jingzhong could not be blamed for being impolite. Your Highness, no matter what, this matter has finally come to an end. Li Jingzhong gave a long sigh. Not only was fifth Prince Li Heng safe and sound, the third Prince Li Li, who had secretly plotted against Li Heng, had been sent to the imperial clan court. This was already the best result. No, this matter is far from over. To Li Jingzhong's surprise, fifth Prince Li Heng shook his head, his eyes flashing as he turned in another direction. He had won his battle with Li Ju and obtained his imperial father's favor. He was confident that for a very long time, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, no one would try to deal with him. But even so, not only was there no excitement on Li Heng's face, his eyes had dimmed. Li Jingzhong froze for a moment, and then he understood. Yes, although the matter with the third prince had been resolved, there was still her that also needed to be dealt with. But this time, Li Jingzhong made no attempt to dissuade him, much less say anything. Instead, he respectfully stepped to the side and made way for fifth Prince Li Heng. Ha! Li Jingzhong mentally gave a long sigh. If possible, he did not want to do this, but for the sake of the true dragon, for the sake of resisting the other princes of the imperial palace, Li Heng had to personally resolve this matter. Bzzz. With a wave of his sleeve, Li Heng did not return to his own palace. Instead, he turned and walked in another direction. He had just received word that her was on the verge of success. Alas, only Li Heng knew that she would never succeed. Hiya! The wheels of the carriage rumbled. If one looked down from the sky, one would see a carriage that was not at all extravagant slowly making its way through the narrow and deep golden alleys of the palace. The carriage did not move very quickly. As it slowly passed through the palace gates, it did not attract the attention of any of the guards. Only when they brushed past each other would the guards notice that outside the carriage window, a refined, dignified, and enchanting young woman was silently gazing out in a daze. 2 more palace gates. Just 2 more palace gates and I can leave. The airflow surged and gusts of wind gushed through the window, brushing against the young woman's temples. The young woman's gaze flickered as she looked at the heavy guards outside the carriage. Her eyes flickered, revealing a trace of deeply hidden anxiety. Chapter 690. But a moment later, there was a rumble as the carriage came to a sudden stop. What's going on? Why aren't we moving forward? The woman's eyes widened as she called out to the carriage. Lady, someone's blocking the way. Coachman's voice came from outside the carriage. Who is it? Don't they know that parking is strictly prohibited here? The woman's eyelids twitched, and she was a little angry. However, in the next moment, she heard a familiar voice. Since you're leaving, why don't you come down and say hello? Bzzz. The woman trembled as if she had been struck by lightning. It was quiet outside the carriage. The woman said nothing, and the people outside quietly waited for her reply. No one answered, and the atmosphere was deathly still. The woman's face alternated between green and white, and her eyes constantly flickered. After some time, perhaps because she understood that she could no longer escape, the woman took a deep breath and quickly regained her composure. Creak! The carriage door opened, and the woman calmly walked out. In front of her was a golden carriage, luxurious and luxurious, parked in the center of the palace alley. The images of dragons on the carriage clearly indicated the noble status of the carriage's owner. Several figures were lined up in front of the carriage, and in the very center was a young and handsome prince. It was none other than 5th Prince Li Heng. Your Highness! Upon seeing Li Heng, Du Jiqi gave a slight bow, her expression natural and unflustered. It was like this was just a chance encounter. You despicable and shameless woman. Even at this stage, you still want to pretend? Our Highness has treated you with sincerity, but you actually want to harm him. You're worse than a beast. Before Li Heng could speak, Li Jingzhong angrily stepped forward and harshly rebuked. If looks could kill, Du Jiqi would have died countless times over. Uncle Jing, Li Heng suddenly shouted, but his gaze had never left Du Jiqi. Li Jingzhong trembled, immediately realizing that he had misspoken and fell silent. No matter what sort of person Du Jiqi was, or what she had done, she was still the fifth prince's woman, and the fifth prince was deeply in love with her. With the fifth prince present, it truly was not his place to speak. Why? Li Heng looked across. Your Highness, what happened? Why are you here? Du Jiqi asked in surprise. Why? Li Heng added. His expression and tone did not change at all. Your Highness, did Jiqi do something wrong? Your Highness, please don't be angry. Tell me and I will definitely change. Du Jiqi said with a terrified expression. You still want to lie to me at a time like this? Li Heng looked forward and closed his eyes, his body trembling in pain. The person he trusted the most, the person who slept by his pillow every day, the person who even wanted to dig out his heart to give to her, turned out to be a spy sent by someone else. She kept saying that she loved him, but she always wanted to kill him. Even at this point, she still wanted to lie to him. Your Highness, are you blaming Jiqi for leaving without saying goodbye? I know it's my fault, but Jiqi received a letter from my sister. Mother is seriously ill, and she wants me to return immediately. Du Jiqi suddenly said. She lowered her head, her expression bitter. I have 3,000 books in my study. That day, only you saw me put that list into the book of songs and place it in the corner of the study. When Imperial Father sent someone to take that list, he didn't touch a single book in the 3,000 books, only that page in the book of songs. Moreover, he didn't even destroy that page. Anyone who wasn't familiar with it would never have been able to do this. Tell me, besides you, who else could have done this and who knows where that list is? Li Heng closed his eyes. Du Jiqi's body trembled, and she was instantly rendered speechless. She had no idea that the Holy Emperor would send someone so stupid as to take that list without even flipping through it. Your Highness, I don't know anything. Someone must be framing me. Du Jiqi's face was bitter as she knelt on the ground. This woman, even at a time like this, she's still so stubborn. Li Jingzhong clenched his fists, his heart burning with rage. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. Tell me, where is the letter your sister gave you? You should still have it on you after such a short period of time. Li Heng's voice suddenly drifted into her ears, causing Du Jiqi's body to tremble, and her beautiful face to instantly turn ghastly pale. Her sister's letter, and her mother's serious illness, were just excuses she had come up with on the spot. There was no such thing as a letter. Even if she wanted to write it, there was no time. Your cleverness can be your own downfall. What else do you have to say for yourself? Li Jingzhong responded and sneered. It was the fifth prince who had reacted quickly, immediately grasping the flaw in her lie. It was the third prince who sent you, right? Li Heng said. Since your Highness believes that it was Jiqi who did it, Jiqi has nothing to say. If you want to kill me or torture me, do as your Highness pleases. Du Jiqi clenched her teeth as she knelt on the ground, her hands hanging by her sides as she waited for death. Get up. Don't kneel before me. Li Heng closed his eyes in disappointment. Our relationship ends here. From now on, I don't know you, and you don't know me. Treat everything as a dream. I can only take it that I misjudged you. Leave. Du Jiqi's body trembled, her face even paler than before. Your Highness. Li Jingzhong panicked. He had never expected Li Heng's reaction. He had originally believed that Li Heng would at least capture her, but he had actually let her go. Uncle Jing, there's no need to say anything more. I have my own plans. Li Heng extended a hand to stop Li Jingzhong, his expression and tone leaving no room for doubt. Li Jingzhong was dumbfounded, momentarily speechless. In all the time he had been with Li Heng, this was the first time he had felt the dignity and bearing of a superior. Your Highness has matured. Li Jingzhong suddenly understood. He didn't say anything else and retreated. Compared to a woman, The lesson and growth Li Heng had received from this incident were far more precious. From this point of view, this matter was not necessarily a bad thing. It seems that the Marquis had long anticipated this scene. Li Jingzhong recalled what Wang Chong had said a few days ago. No matter what the fifth prince decided, he was not to stop him. And he suddenly understood. Your Highness, I know that it's too late to say anything. Jiqi will never be able to repay your Highness's kindness, but I will always engrave it in my heart. Jiqi bids farewell. Du Jiqi stood up, a complicated look in her eyes. She did not return to the carriage, instead brushing past Li Heng and heading for the palace gate. Until she disappeared, Li Heng's eyes were tightly shut, and he didn't turn his head. But when the final gate opened and a rumble came from the distance, Li Heng's body fiercely trembled. Li Jingzhong coldly watched on, and he couldn't help but sigh. Even in the end, Li Heng couldn't bear to do it and couldn't do it. Your Highness, we truly must thank young Master Wang this time. If not for him, we would still be in the dark, not knowing that this woman was a spy sent by another prince. If not for young Master Wang's vigilance and arrangements, we really would have been in danger. The third prince would have already succeeded, Li Jingzhong said, a look of lingering fear on his face. He only knew that the prince was lustful, so he had found Wang Chong to persuade Li Heng. But he hadn't expected the young Marquis to be even more vigilant than him, and see through Du Jiqi at a glance. At the start, the fifth prince would never have believed it, but when he did as Wang Chong had said and left early to see his master, everything was instantly revealed. Frankly speaking, when he had seen Du Jiqi's actions from the crack in the study, even Li Jingzhong, who had been wary of her, had been given a fright. The Du Jiqi in the study had been nimble, and alert, completely different from her usual demure and dignified self. Li Heng nodded and raised his head. His eyes flickered for a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. Whether it was leaving the palace, returning to the palace, meeting with the master, leaving a list, or even finding someone to disguise his handwriting and interacting with the border generals, all of this had been Wang Chong's idea. In the end, not only was he safe, Third Prince Li Ju had entered the imperial clan court, and he had even gained a thorough understanding of the secret Heaven Bureau, which had not received much attention, which pleased his imperial father, and won his imperial father's favor and favor. This was something that Li Heng had not expected at the start. Misfortune and fortune depended on each other, and fortune lurked within misfortune. This was something that could not be understood no matter how many books one read, or how many levels of martial arts one reached. But now that he thought about it, this journey had been fraught with danger. The slightest carelessness would have resulted in complete defeat. Tell the young Marquis that I thank him for his warning. I owe him a favor. In addition, inform Du Hongjian and Wei Xiaoyu that I want to see them. Now that the matter of the fake list is over, even if I meet with Du Hongjian, no one will dare to say anything. In addition, I want to focus on my lessons and cultivation. If there's nothing important, don't disturb me, Li Heng said, his eyes shining with the resoluteness and wisdom of his former self. Yes, Your Highness. Li Jingzhong was overjoyed. For so long, the fifth prince had been with Du Jiqi this entire time, neglecting his studies and martial arts. This was the first time he had heard Li Heng mention studying and cultivating on his own initiative. Moreover, after this matter, Li Heng had clearly matured. He now knew how to use this chance to rope in Du Hongjian and Wei Xiaoyu. This was something that the Li Heng of the past would never have done. This servant will do so. Li Jingzhong was overjoyed and quickly left. Outside the palace gate, a figure walked out of the imperial palace. As she stood on the bustling street, Du Jiqi finally turned her head and glanced at the majestic golden palace walls behind her. With no one else present, Du Jiqi felt a little sad and perplexed, but all of this quickly vanished. She melted into the crowd, got her bearings and quickly left. Marquis, are we really going to let her go like this? In a nearby restaurant, Old Eagle and Wang Chong stood side by side, gazing in the direction that Du Jiqi had left, their brows deeply furrowed. A two-faced woman who had even tried to move against fifth Prince Li Heng. In his opinion, such a woman should not be allowed to live. Nurturing a tiger would only invite calamity. since the fifth prince isn't willing to kill her and let her leave the imperial palace alive, what right do we have to do anything? Wang Chong leaned against the railing and indifferently said, his expression rather calm. Moreover, a tree is not a plant, so how can it be emotionless? Although she's a spy sent by someone else, after spending so much time together, she might not have no feelings for the fifth prince. Perhaps she's already been punished, so what need is there for us to do anything? A hint of surprise flashed through the eagle's eyes, as if he understood. Okay, let's not worry about that. The fifth prince's matter is over, so we should get back to our own business. Chapter 691. In the depths of the Wang clan residence, Wang Chong finally saw the person he had been waiting for. This was a middle-aged scholar in his 40s or 50s. He was dressed in a white robe and had a long beard. He had a scholarly and frail aura that seemed like a gust of wind could topple him over. Paying respects to Marquis, upon seeing Wang Chong and the eagle walk in, the middle-aged scholar hurriedly bowed, trembling in fear. He didn't even dare to breathe too loudly, his eyes fixed on the ground. It was clear that he had no idea why this illustrious and prestigious disciple of the Son of Heaven, the young Marquis of the Tang dynasty, would summon a nameless and insignificant teacher like him. Marquis, according to Marquis's orders, we searched the entire capital. In the end, we found him in an unremarkable Taoist temple. At that time, he was already preparing to go on a journey with his luggage. If we had been just a little later, he would have already left. Wei Guo and Wei Wu said. It was clear that the two of them had no idea why Wang Chong would have them search the entire city for a middle-aged man who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken and spend so much time and energy. Wang Chong ignored Wei Guo and Wei Wu. From the moment he stepped through the gate, his eyes had been fixed on the middle-aged scholar. I didn't think that I would really be able to find him. Wang Chong's eyes were bright, and his heart was bursting with excitement. Although this middle-aged scholar seemed nameless, he had an illustrious reputation in another field. Wang Chong rarely had people he admired, but this middle-aged scholar was definitely one of them. You are Wen Shuyang? Wang Chong said expectantly. This lowly one is. To be summoned by Marquis is the fortune of this lowly one's 3 lifetimes. I just don't know why the Marquis has summoned me. Wen Shuyang's face was filled with fear and trepidation. This was the first time he had seen an important figure of this level, and he felt very uneasy. Ha ha ha, it's really him. At this moment, there was no doubt in Wang Chong's heart. His name was Wen Shuyang, and he even had a long beard. This person before him was exactly like the person he'd heard of in the legends, and he was absolutely that Master Yuan without a doubt. In the Tang dynasty, out of disdain for foreigners, very few people learned the language of foreigners. This was why Wang Chong's ability to speak Sindhi and Uzan had shocked so many people. Even Daluan Ruozan and Huashu Wuzong found it hard to believe. However, Wang Chong didn't think so. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you emerge victorious. If he wanted to defeat the barbarians, he had to learn their language, understand them, and know their actual situation. He couldn't reject them and hide his eyes and ears. These were the words of an elder who had taught Wang Chong Sindhi and Uzan, and these words had come from this Wen Shuyang. Although almost no one in the imperial court or among the nobles knew of this Wen Shuyang, as long as it was related to the western regions, especially the teachers in the capital and the silk merchants of the western regions, this Wen Shuyang was famous. It wasn't just because he knew 23 languages and was proficient in Turkic, Uzan, Mengshi Zhao, Goguryeo, Arabian, Karaks, and the languages of the various kingdoms of the western regions. It was also because he was extremely talented in teaching. He had taught the elderly children Taoists, nuns, women, peddlers, butchers. Almost everyone had learned a language or two from him, and it would only take them a month or two to master it. Almost all the most formidable linguists of the later generations had been his students, including the elder, who had taught Wang Chong Sindhi and Uzan. However, this Master Yuan had only stayed in the capital for a few years before leaving for the western regions, where it was said that he had ultimately died. When Wang Chong had heard of this, he had felt a great deal of regret. If the Tang dynasty had paid a little more attention to this Master Yuan, had understood a little more about the surrounding kingdoms, had paid a little more attention to the rising Abbasid Caliphate in Charax-Spazinu, perhaps everything would have been completely different. In order to gain a better understanding of the powers surrounding the Tang dynasty, one needed a large number of talents who could understand their languages, especially those who knew how to teach. Master Yuan was this sort of person. As long as he was given a little help and a stage, he would definitely be able to raise a large number of talents to assist the Tang dynasty in understanding the surrounding kingdoms. But this was not the only reason that Wang Chong had searched the capital for him. This was because deep within Wang Chong's heart, he had an even larger plan. From the great Emperor Wu of Han of the Qin and Han to the current Tang dynasty, the western regions had been divided and reunited, gaining and losing, always in the cycle of occupation and loss. But the kingdoms of the western regions had never had much affection for the central plains. And in order to resolve all this and avoid this cycle of occupation and loss, the key lay in language. Because of the language barrier, there was no communication, no understanding, and naturally no affection. But if both sides, from the top to the bottom, from the high-ranking generals to the low-ranking soldiers, could all freely communicate, then everything would be completely different. If they could understand what sort of central plains the Tang dynasty was, what sort of Tang dynasty the people of the western regions had, their feelings for the central plains would be completely different. And to achieve this, one did not have to teach the people of the Tang dynasty the language of the western regions, but to teach the people of the western regions the language of the Tang dynasty. Only in this way could one solve the problem once and for all. But first, someone who knew the language of the western regions had to teach them. And Wan Shuyang was the key person that Wang Chong found to solve this problem. Teacher, Wang Chong has been rude, but if I may be so bold as to ask, does teacher really know 23 different languages? Wang Chong said. Yuan Shusong's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise when he heard this. He did know many languages, but even the people around him probably did not know that he knew 23 languages. How did this famous master in front of him know? And it was such a small matter. Yes. Although Wan Shuyang was surprised, he did not dare to be negligent in his answer. I wonder how teacher learned so many languages. Wang Chong said with a smile, and his eyes became softer. When this lowly one was young, I was young and frivolous, not knowing the immensity of the heavens and earth. Coupled with the fact that my family was rather wealthy, I spent a period of time wandering around the western regions, traveling through Sindhu, Arabia, and Charax-Spazinu, learning their languages. Wan Shuyang said, You've been to Arabia? Wang Chong was rather surprised. Yes, I lived there for a short time. How long? About 2 years. Wan Shuyang blushed. Wang Chong became pensive as he saw Wan Shuyang's reaction. This person had traveled the world in his youth, and his arrival in Arabia was probably not as simple as a short stay. In other words, you should have a very good understanding of Arabia? Wang Chong said. This lowly one has a little understanding. Wan Shuyang froze, and as he stared at the young marquis, he began to understand his intentions. Arabia is completely different from our central plains. Their territory is enormous, probably about the same size as our Tang dynasty. About the same size? Are you trying to say that it's even larger than our Tang dynasty? Wang Chong said. Wan Shuyang's body trembled as he stared at Wang Chong in astonishment. In the Tang dynasty, everyone believed that the Tang dynasty was the largest country in the world, and their impression of Arabia was that it was a small country around the same size as Goguryeo. If even the people of the Chamberlain of Dependencies thought this way, then anyone else would. He was already very daring to say that Arabia's territory was about the same size as the Central Plains, but he had never imagined that Wang Chong would directly say that Arabia's territory was even larger than the Tang dynasty. This was the first time Wan Shuyang had ever encountered such a noble. He suddenly felt like he couldn't understand this young man. Master Yuan, since you've been to Arabia, that's even better. Tell me, what is your impression of Arabia and its people? How do you think they compare to the Tang dynasty? Wang Chong said before Master Yuan could think any deeper. There's no need to be apprehensive. I want to hear your honest opinion. Then forgive this lowly one for speaking recklessly. The people of the capital only know that the merchants of the western regions are good-natured, skilled in business, and easy to get along with. But in reality, the true Arabs are extremely fierce and valiant. Everyone says that the people of Uzan are natural warriors, but even the people of Uzan are far inferior to them. Wan Shuyang lowered his head, his first words causing the eagle to shudder in shock. Only Wang Chong gave a slight nod, not too surprised. The Arabs do not fear death, not only against outsiders, but also against their own people. I once had the fortune to witness one of their internal battles. Everyone charged forward, not one retreating, fighting to the very last moment. The Arabs value weapons, armor, and war horses more than any other wealth, so the Arabs have developed an extremely advanced weaponsmithing industry. This is something that everyone in the capital knows. But this lowly one believes that what the Arabs are most famous for is not their weapons, but their war horses. When this lowly one was in Arabia, this lowly one once saw their war horses up close. They were as tall as a man and extremely muscular. Moreover, their charging and explosiveness were also very powerful. In this aspect, not even the highland steeds of the Uzan, or the war horses of the Turks can compare. But when this lowly one was traveling through Arabia, what I felt most uneasy about was the way of thinking of the Arabs. Although many of them have never been to the Tang dynasty, even ordinary people know of the existence of the Tang dynasty, and all levels of society make no attempt to conceal their desire for the Tang dynasty. This lowly one once heard in the marketplace that their sovereign once declared in front of all his ministers that anyone who could conquer the East, conquer the Tang dynasty, would be made emperor of the Central Plains. Rumble. Wan Shuyang's words caused both Wang Chong and the eagle to tremble in shock. In the Central Plains, the Holy Emperor was a supreme existence. The Arab emperor's words were clearly the greatest insult and contempt for the Holy Emperor and the entire Central Plains. Chapter 692. Wan Shuyang, don't speak nonsense. How could the Emperor of Arabia say such a thing? Do you think you can treat the rumors of the marketplace as true? Do you know how great of a calamity it will provoke if this gets out? The eagle harshly rebuked. Wan Shuyang's expression froze. He knew that he had spoken out of turn, and immediately shut his mouth. Enough. Eagle, he's speaking the truth. Wang Chong extended a hand to stop the eagle. All the foreigners, all the sovereigns of the countries bordering the Great Tang, no matter how disdainful they were of the Great Tang, or how much they loathed it, none of them dared to say such words in front of all their ministers, because such words would be the source of disaster. Moreover, such words would truly incite a fierce war between the two countries. This was no minor matter. But Wang Chong knew that the Abbasid Caliphate emperor really had said these words. Unlike the countries bordering the Tang dynasty, Arabia was extremely far from the Central Plains, separated by tens of thousands of li and many other countries. Moreover, Arabia was extremely aggressive. From the moment of its birth, it had always been expanding, killing, and conquering. Arabia had not been able to possess such a vast territory at the start, but the result of constant expansion and annexation. From this point of view, Wang Chong was not at all surprised that the Emperor of Arabia would say such covetous words about the Central Plains. In truth, the Arabs were already baring their fangs and claws at the Tang dynasty. Wan Shuyang raised his head and shot a grateful glance at Wang Chong. For some reason, this young marquis gave him a completely different feeling from the nobles he had known. Master Yuan, continue. Wang Chong raised his hand and continued. The imperial court is in dire need of people who understand Arabia, but very few people have actually been to Arabia, so we naturally won't be able to get anything out of them. Therefore, in this regard, we really need the headmaster of the academy to give us some pertinent advice, because this is very important to us and the imperial court. At the end of his speech, Wang Chong's expression was solemn. Wang Chong had some understanding of Arabia in this world, but Wang Chong had still never been to Arabia, whether it was in this life or in the past. Wang Chong's understanding of the Tang dynasty was all on paper and in the oral accounts of others. He had never had such first-hand information before. Since Marquis asked this lowly one to speak, Then this lowly one will be bold enough to speak. When this lowly one was young, I traveled through Arabia, and felt that it was only a matter of time before Arabia became an enemy of my Tang dynasty. With their personalities, they would covet the Central Plains sooner or later. Moreover, the Arabs have great stamina, drinking horses' milk and goats' milk from childhood, and eating date palms. Coupled with the hot climate, their physiques are even stronger than the Han of the Central Plains. They are natural warriors. In addition, they have a habit of worshipping courage, not fighting. Thus, this lowly one feels that the Arab warriors are even stronger than the soldiers of our Tang dynasty. Seeing how serious Wang Chong was, Wen Shuyang hesitated for a while before finally speaking. As soon as he finished speaking, the room fell silent. The eagle didn't really believe it. The people of the Tang dynasty were famed throughout the world for their bravery and courage. Otherwise, they would have never been able to suppress the surrounding barbarians, much less achieve their current golden age. But Wen Shuyang had traveled through Arabia before, so he had no choice but to believe his words. As for Wang Chong, his heart was heavy. Wang Chong had always known that the Arabs were not easy to deal with, but Wen Shuyang's words still left him rather surprised. Wen Shuyang had probably been to the western regions and seen the Anqi Protectorate army, but he had still said such words. This could only mean one thing: that the Arab warriors were extremely powerful and had given him a massive shock. Marquis, given the nature of the Arabs, they will sooner or later become an enemy of my Tang dynasty. They cannot be underestimated. Wen Shuyang lowered his head and sternly said, "Have you said these words to anyone else?" Wang Chong solemnly said, "This lowly one said these words when I returned from my travels, and even submitted a memorial to the imperial court. Unfortunately, I was imprisoned by the office of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, and even spent 7 years in prison, eating prison meals for 7 years." Wen Shuyang gave a deep sigh. Buzz, Wang Chong and the eagle were both stunned. These bastards, do they still have any regard for the law? The eagle clenched his fists in rage. Neither of them had expected that Wen Shuyang would suffer such a fate. These scoundrels truly have gone too far. Wang Chong's eyes were also twitching. If Wen Shuyang had not personally said these words, Wang Chong would have never known that he had suffered such a fate. The imperial court had established the Chamberlain of Dependencies to entertain the envoys of the various countries and show that the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains was a state of benevolence and propriety. But now, the Chamberlain of Dependencies was gradually forgetting its original duties and becoming a place to curry favor with the envoys of the various countries while suppressing its own people. Marquis, we really have to do something. Those people from the Chamberlain of Dependencies are getting more and more excessive. If this continues, won't the Chamberlain of Dependencies become a place to serve foreigners? The eagle turned his head to look at Wang Chong. Wang Chong said nothing. The affairs of the Chamberlain of Dependencies were extremely complicated and could not be explained in a single sentence. This was because the Chamberlain of Dependencies was directly responsible to the Holy Emperor, but the Holy Emperor had no interest in such a trivial matter. Moreover, the true controller of the Chamberlain of Dependencies was not the Holy Emperor, but King Qi. As long as King Qi was around, toppling the Chamberlain of Dependencies would not be a simple matter. But they truly could not be allowed to do as they pleased. There seems to be someone called Zheng Chenzhou in the Chamberlain of Dependencies, right? Think of a way to replace him. Wang Chong said calmly. Marquis, are you talking about that Prince Uzun from last time? The eagle probed. Wang Chong sneered and nodded, his expression exuding a domineering air. The Chamberlain of Dependencies should also be taught a lesson. Kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Let's start with that Uzun person's Zheng Chenzhou. In the past, Wang Chong really would not have been able to do anything to those officials of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. But now, the Wang clan's influence and status, as well as the King of Song's status as a member of the imperial family, was enough to influence the situation in court. To replace Zheng Chenzhou, who was suppressing his own people and currying favor with Uzun, was truly as easy as turning over one's hand. This could also be considered a warning to the Chamberlain of Dependencies. With these few words, Wang Chong had already decided the fate of an official of the Chamberlain of Dependencies. Even Wen Shuyang couldn't help but be stunned, gaining a new understanding of this youth's power and status. Master Yuan, to tell the truth, I intend to build a school dedicated to teaching the languages of the Western regions, the Abbasid Caliphate, Spazinu, Sindhu, Uzan, and the other countries. This will increase our Tang dynasty's understanding of the surrounding foreign countries. I am prepared to provide this school with a large sum of money and long-term support. But the school is lacking a teacher. I wonder if the headmaster is willing? Wang Chong looked at Wen Shuyang and smiled, revealing his true goal. The countries of the Western regions all spoke different languages. If he wanted to govern the Western frontier, he needed people who understood the languages of the Western regions, including the languages of the Abbasid Caliphate and Spazinu. And the best way to do that was to groom him now. Is Marquis speaking the truth? The moment Wang Chong said this, Wen Shuyang raised his head in delight. Master, what do you mean? Wang Chong smiled. I couldn't ask for more. Wen Shuyang was extremely excited. His life's goal was to build a school to teach the languages of the various countries of the Western regions and the foreigners. This would increase the Tang dynasty's understanding of the various foreign countries, so as to avoid miscalculations and endless disasters. Unfortunately, in his several decades in the capital, no one was willing to help him. Everyone either looked down on him or ridiculed him. Wen Shuyang was so depressed that he decided to leave the capital and travel to the western regions. By the time Wei Guo and Wei Wu found him, he had already packed up his belongings. But Wen Shuyang had not expected that when he was at his lowest and most despondent moment, he would have such a massive turnaround. Ha, master, I'll leave this matter to you. The eagle, I'll leave this matter to you. Build the school as quickly as possible. In addition, tell Elder Hu and Elder Yi to select talented descendants from the various clans, and send them to the school to learn the languages of the various countries. Wang Chong heartily laughed. With Wen Shuyang's Master Yuan, Wang Chong's plan to govern the western regions was like a tiger that had grown wings. With the addition of a crucial figure like Master Yuan, the final hole in his plan had been filled. Yes, Marquis. The eagle quickly led Wen Shuyang away. Not long after the eagle and Wen Shuyang left, Wang Chong's final guest of the day appeared. This lowly Wen Yang Hongchong pays respects to Marquis. With a resounding voice, a slightly plump middle-aged man with the appearance of a merchant, 10 agate rings on his fingers, and a red coral jade pendant hanging from his waist, strode in with his head held high and bowed to Wang Chong. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Rise. Wang Chong slightly raised his hand. Unlike Wen Shuyang, Wang Chong got straight to the point. I hear that Sir is extremely good at business, and has connections with the Hu merchants of the western regions on the Silk Road. You even went deep into the Abbasid Caliphate to sell ceramics and tea leaves? Marquis thinks too highly of me. My clan truly does have a few small businesses, and some dealings with Hu merchants. However, the Hu merchants are very xenophobic, and aren't very willing to do business with merchants other than their own. Thus, our business has never been very large, just a few small transactions. As for Arabia and Spazinu, in my early years, my clan didn't know the immensity of the heavens, and lost a great deal of capital in these two countries. We didn't make much money, but we barely made a name for ourselves. Yang Hongchong said. Wang Chong nodded. The merchants of the western regions, Spazinu, and Arabia were extremely xenophobic. This Yang Hongchong and his Yang clan were one of the few clans of the Tang dynasty that could do business on the Silk Road. There is a city called Talas on the Silk Road. Does Sir Yang know of it? Talas? Yang Hongchong finally raised his head and looked at the young Marquis in astonishment. Chapter 693. Wang Chong's eyes brightened in surprise at Yang Hongchong's words. Saidi. This was the first time Wang Chong had heard of this name. In the future war between the Tang dynasty and Arabia, the two great empires of the East and West, there were several names that would play a pivotal role in determining the course of the war. And one of these names was the Lord of Talas. Although Gao Xinji was a foreigner, as the Anqi Protector General, one of the twin paragons of the empire, Gao Xianji's strength could not be doubted. Wang Chong had once studied all of his records. Gao Xianji's greatest trait was his fondness for cavalry. Soldiers valued speed, and when they marched 1,000 li, they would often appear in unexpected directions. Alas, even a wise man could make a mistake. Gao Xianji's greatest failure had been underestimating his opponent and failing to occupy Talas before the time limit had been set. As a result, what was supposed to be a surprise attack from 1,000 miles away eventually turned into a protracted siege battle. And in the city of Talas, it was the lord of the city of Talas who had resisted the Annam Protectorate and held down Gao Xianji, exhausting the Tang army's morale. A single misstep had led to subsequent missteps. Although Gao Xianji was extremely skilled in surprise attacks, sieges were his natural weakness. In all seriousness, it was precisely the Lord of Talas that had led to the ultimate defeat of Gao Xianji and the Anxi Protectorate army, causing the Tang dynasty to lose 3 million square kilometers of territory in the western regions that it had spent centuries developing. Not many people knew about the Lord of the city of Talas, and this was the first time Wang Chong had heard of him. When you interacted with Saidi, what sort of person did you think he was? Wang Chong's brow rose as he immediately asked. This person has a very good reputation in the western region and has a lot of prestige. I once heard about him in the western region. Syed was doing business with someone and promised them a batch of goods. However, something happened, and the person he did business with died of a serious illness. After Syed found out, he followed the trail and spent 2 years until he found the person's family. In the end, he gave the goods to the person's widow and son, and left a sum of money for them. Because of this matter, the merchants of Talas and the surrounding areas have great faith in him. They know that he is a man of his word, and will never give up. Yang Hongchang paused for a moment before changing the topic. But I've interacted with him for a while, and know that the Lord of Talas isn't as simple as he seems. He is extremely strict with his subordinates, and if anyone violates his rules, Syed will show no mercy. In Talas, he has executed maids, servants, merchants, so many people respect and fear him. The Silk Road runs from the Tang dynasty to Arabia, spanning more than 10,000 li, and passing through many countries. Thus, many Hu merchants choose to secretly evade taxes. But Talas is different. All the Hu merchants pay their taxes the earliest and most conscientious, so no one stealthily evades taxes. As a result, the security there is excellent. In a place as chaotic as the western regions, this is extremely rare. Wang Chong said nothing, but his straight brows slowly creased. The matter that Yang Hongchang spoke of was not good news for the Tang dynasty. With a person like Syed present, the future war between Arabia and the Tang dynasty would be extremely disadvantageous to the Tang dynasty. Yang Hongchang, I want you to help me with something. Are you willing? Wang Chong suddenly said. Marquis, please speak. Yang Hongchang immediately lowered his head and bowed. I want you to take a group of people into Talas and help me keep an eye on the movements of Arabia and Talas. No matter what happens, if there is even the slightest disturbance, especially if the Arabs are acting strangely, I need you to immediately report to me. Wang Chong sternly said. This, Marquis, we Han look different from the Hu. If we blend in with the Hu, we'll be very conspicuous, and will be easily noticed. In these circumstances, it'll be very difficult to obtain any useful information. And if we're noticed and become suspicious, our lives will be in danger. Yang Hongchang had a troubled look on his face. Haha, the Hu also have 72 kingdoms, and not all of them are of the same mind. Since it's easy for the Han to become suspicious, you can go find some Hu. Sir Yang has operated in the western regions for many years. Surely you can hire a few Hu? Wang Chong heartily laughed. Even the Hu might not be of the same mind as us. It's common for them to take money and not work. Yang Hongchang hesitantly said. Seeing this, Wang Chong only grinned. He did not argue with Yang Hongchang, only saying 5 words. 10,000 taels of gold. 20,000 taels of gold. But I'll add 20% more tea leaves. At the same time, I'll waive the taxes your Yang clan has to pay when leaving the western regions. Wang Chong extended 2 fingers. Marquis is wise. This lowly one will do his utmost to supervise those who and have them work for our Tang dynasty to the death. He will also keep an eye on the movements of Talas and the Arabs. This lowly one guarantees that Marquis will be the first to know of the slightest disturbance. However, this lowly one's clan has recently encountered some difficulties. If Marquis were to increase the quota of porcelain by 20%, this lowly one would be eternally grateful. Yang Hongchang had a sincere expression on his face as he spoke. Wang Chong inwardly chuckled. Merchants valued profit and business was business. To put it bluntly, Yang Hongchang was not willing to work for free. The Silk Road was also known as the Golden Road, and what who merchants bought the most in the capital were silk and tea wares. However, the imperial court had placed a limit on silk and tea wares. Each great clan had a quota that could not be exceeded. It was not surprising that Yang Hongchang wanted an additional quota of tea leaves and porcelain. 20% more every month would be nearly 10,000 taels of gold. A steady stream would make a considerable profit. Deal, Wang Chong indifferently said as he glanced at Yang Hongchang. If you do this well, your Yang clan's caravans on the Silk Road will be escorted by the soldiers of the imperial court. In addition, you should also know that I'm establishing a fief city on the Silk Road. I know. Although Yang Hongchang was doing his best to conceal it, his bright eyes still betrayed the excitement in his heart. There was no one on the Silk Road who did not know of the city Wang Chong spoke of. But the Yang clan's influence was meager, and it could not compare to those great clans and nobles. So Yang Hongchang had not dared to mention it. But how could he not have such thoughts? Do a good job. I'll leave you a few plots of land in that city. In the future, no matter what you do there, your Yang clan will not have to pay any taxes. Wang Chong said. Many thanks, Marquis. All members of the Yang clan are willing to swear loyalty to Marquis to the death. Even if this lowly one has to sacrifice his life, he will definitely complete the matter of the city of Talas for Marquis. Yang Hongchang was overjoyed and immediately knelt on the ground. Merchants valued profit, and the generous profits that Wang Chong was offering had already surpassed the Yang clan's normal business on the Silk Road. In particular, the plot of land that Wang Chong had promised in the City of Steel was something that would last for generations to come, something that would benefit future generations. Based on this alone, the Yang clan would be able to stand for centuries without falling. Moreover, with the massive tree that was the Wang clan behind them, the Yang clan's meteoric rise was just around the corner. Wang Chong silently smiled at the kneeling Yang Hongchang. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. The City of Steel had to be built, and the cement roads had to be repaired. But the true enemy of the Tang dynasty, the Arabs to the west of the Tsong Mountains, also had to be paid attention to. And Yang Hongchang was the most suitable candidate. No one understood the western regions better than the merchants of the Silk Road. Yang Hongchang quickly left with the order, along with 10 some guards of the Wang clan, and a chest of gold. Yang Hongchang was free to use these people and the gold. The top battles were all battles of strategy and information. Whoever had the faster information, the more informed, the deeper, and the more thorough strategy would be the final winner. But in this era, there were far fewer people who shared Wang Chong's thoughts. It's about time for me to go to Wuxiang. Wang Chong raised his head, this thought flitting through his mind. Several days ago, Wang Chong had received a letter from Li Sai informing him that his operation in Wuxiang had not gone as smoothly as he had imagined. The Wuxiang of this life seemed even fiercer and fiercer than it had been in the last, and it was even more unwilling to be tamed. It had to be said that even someone like Li Sai, the future invincible great general, had run into a snag there. It had to be said that Wang Chong was extremely surprised. In the end, he would still have to personally subdue the number 1 cavalry force of the Central Plains. Hiya! 5 days later, Wang Chong set out from the capital with his army, heading for Wuxiang on the Silk Road to the northwest. The wheel of history continued to roll forward, and Wang Chong was finally about to face the strongest, fiercest, and most difficult subordinate to subdue. To the northwest of the Tang dynasty, to the south of Qixi, and to the east of Longxi, was a vast mountain range. The mountains there were steep and the terrain treacherous. The slightest carelessness could lead one to fall into a bottomless abyss and shatter one's bones. Moreover, the mountains would occasionally be shrouded in white fog that obscured one's vision and made it very easy to get lost. Moreover, this place was barren, with no gold, no treasure, and no roads connecting it. Not even the bandits and brigands of the Silk Road were willing to venture too deeply into this place. It was like this place had been forgotten by the world. No one knew of it, and no one cared about it. And this place was Wuxiang. My lord, these unruly people are too impudent. It's fine if they don't listen to the summons, but they even stole the token that Marquis gave to my lord. They're simply too unbridled and lawless. In this subordinate's view, we should mobilize the army and completely exterminate them. On the barren mountain range, a hazy mist drifted in front of them. An armored general stood side by side with the enormous, giant-like Li Sai. His face was filled with anger. That's right. They didn't listen to orders, and even injured Du Wu and Luo Chuan. They've gone too far. To Li Sai's right, a deputy general also angrily said. As he spoke, he glanced at the ground behind him. In the fog, he could see figures lying on the ground, constantly bleeding. These were the comrades who had entered Wuxiang with them. In this remote and desolate area, there were dilapidated houses everywhere. The fact that they were willing to cross the mountains to recruit soldiers showed that they thought highly of them. Who would have thought that these people not only spoke rudely, but also dared to attack them? Chapter 694. Awa. A howl that was like that of an ape, and yet not an ape, and yet not a man came out of the white fog. These howls were short and sharp, and they were clearly harshly warning. It's Wuxiang's men. The generals paled at these howls. They're about to move, another general said. Get ready. No matter what, we won't leave this place. Li Sai stood in front of the cliff, his eyes looking into the distance, his expression firm and unwavering. In the last few days, Wuxiang's men had attacked in several waves, but Li Sai had occupied this cliff and never retreated. A man of character kept to his word. Since he had promised his young master, no matter how dangerous this place was, no matter how difficult the mission was, he would never retreat. Awa! The howls in the white fog were getting more and more hurried, more and more fierce. The fog churned and gusts of wind could be heard from all around. Wuxiang's men were finally about to move. Li Sai listened to the howls in his ears, but his expression was calm. He only took a few more steps forward. It had been more than half a month since Wang Chong and his men had set out from the capital and traveled west to the vicinity of Wuxiang. How is it? Is there any news of General Li? Wang Chong stood on the summit of a green mountain, his hands behind his back as he spoke. No. Ever since General Li sent us a message, there hasn't been any news from him. There hasn't been any news from him. The mountains here are so dense that we can't get in touch with him. A voice said. Wang Chong nodded, his face unperturbed. Li Sai was a future divine great general. Whether or not his mission was progressing smoothly, Wang Chong was confident that nothing would go wrong with his strength. After a few moments of silence, Wang Chong turned his head and looked ahead. He was looking at a towering mountain range that was clearly several times taller than the surrounding mountains. These mountains rose and fell like the waves of the sea, extending all the way to the ends of the earth. Looking at this vast mountain range, everyone could feel a sense of desolation and ancientness, as if it had been forgotten by time, causing them to subconsciously want to escape. But in Wang Chong's eyes, these lofty mountains and precipitous ridges were filled with a sense of intimacy. I finally returned. Wang Chong looked ahead and sighed, his mind filled with emotion. This was not Wang Chong's first time seeing these mountains, but it was the first time he had seen them before the calamity. They were completely different from the dilapidated and crumbling state he had seen in his mind. This is what Wuxiang looked like before it was destroyed. It's truly beautiful, Wang Chong quietly said to himself. He had been standing in front of these mountains for quite a few hours now, but in Wang Chong's eyes, looking at these seemingly identical mountains hundreds of times was still not enough. This was because these mountains, which bandits and brigands were unwilling to visit, were nurtured by the hopes of the future Tang dynasty. The Wuxiang cavalry, the world's #1 force. In the apocalyptic era when the stars of generals had dimmed, this force of 5,000 soldiers had given many people hope and entrusted their hopes to them. It was also the strongest force under Wang Chong's command and his greatest reliance. If he wanted to change the world, he needed a truly invincible army of superior quality and strength. The Southwestern Protectorate Army could not reach this standard, nor could the elite experts that Wang Chong had transferred from the great clans. Not even the 30,000 Anxi army that Gao Xinji had claimed to be the Tang dynasty's most elite force could reach this goal. And it just so happened that Wang Chong's ideal army was situated in these steep and precipitous mountains. There was no place in the world that could give Wang Chong such a feeling. "Are you ready?" Chief Wang suddenly turned his head and said, "Marquis, we're ready." Behind him, Gao Feng and Nie Yin respectfully acknowledged the order. This time, Wang Chong had not brought many men with him. It was just them and the several dozen elites who had survived the War of the Southwest. These were all experts who had experienced life-and-death battles and were extremely loyal to Wang Chong. Although they came from various clans, in their hearts, Wang Chong's status was probably even higher than that of their respective clan heads. "Let's go." Wang Chong nodded, and with a wave of his hand, he began to lead his men into action. After leaving the summit of Mount Daqing, Wang Chong's group did not head straight for the steepest and precipitous mountains. Instead, they took a detour to another place in the northwest. The Silk Road led from the capital to Anxi, and the further west one went, the more desolate and remote it became. And of all the roads along the Silk Road, Wuxiang was the most desolate and remote of all. Not even bandits and brigands were willing to go there, so one could imagine how famous it was. As he gazed at those towering mountains, even Wang Chong had to admit that crossing these dangerous mountains was no simple task. Even he would not find it difficult to reach the center of these mountains, the village of the Wuxiang people. However, Wang Chong knew that although the majority of these mountains were dangerous and precipitous, and the slightest carelessness could lead to falling into a bottomless abyss, there was a small path in this region that was relatively less precipitous. But in this region, there was a small path that was relatively less precipitous and safer. It was much easier to enter the village of the Wuxiang people from this path than from any other place. "It's here." An hour later, 10 some li from his original position, Wang Chong raised his head and looked forward. Between two peaks that pierced into the clouds, the sunlight shone through the clouds, creating a narrow and almost imperceptible sliver of the sky between the mountains. This slit in the sky was several dozen meters high and 4 feet wide. From a distance, it was very difficult to notice. If not for Wang Chong, no one else would have noticed it. How did Marquis know of this place? Gao Feng and Nie Yin glanced at each other in shock. From the capital to this place, they had never left Wang Chong's side. The two of them were completely sure that Wang Chong had never been to this place before. But for some reason, Wang Chong seemed to know this place like the back of his hand. "Follow behind me. Don't get lost. It's very dangerous here. If you're not careful with your cultivation, if you fall from a height of several thousand feet, you'll be smashed to pieces." Wang Chong said, completely ignoring Gao Feng and Nie Yin behind him. No matter if it was a true martial realm martial artist or a profound martial realm martial artist, none of them had the ability to fly in the sky or burrow into the ground. Falling from those steep peaks was a dead end for them. This was also the reason why the bandits on the road to the west were unwilling to enter this place. They didn't even want to build their nests here. "Yes, Marquis." Wang Chong didn't say much. He bowed and took the lead to enter the skyline. Along the way, there were jagged mountain peaks on both sides, and the ground was also covered with sharp mountain rocks that seemed to be able to pierce through the soles of their feet. "Ayowu!" Suddenly, a howl came from afar, shaking the mountains. "Marquis!" Gao Feng and Nie Yan's expressions changed. Clang! 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 They immediately unsheathed their weapons. "There's no need to be nervous. It's Wuxiang people, let them be. They haven't discovered us yet." Wang Chong smiled. He held down Gao Feng and Nie Yin, putting their unsheathed blades back into their sheaths. Although the Wuxiang people were isolated from the rest of the world, on the road to the west, there were bandits and bandits running amok. The Wuxiang people were right next to them, so they had always maintained a high level of vigilance. Towards outsiders, the Wuxiang people's vigilance was actually quite strong. It really hasn't changed at all. Hearing the howls from afar, Wang Chong's lips curled into a smile. His heart was filled with warmth. Before officially joining the army and receiving formal military training, the Wuxiang people had always maintained their primitive traditions. The primitive and precipitous terrain of the mountains had trained the Wuxiang people to be the most agile. Like monkeys, they swung around the mountains and used the short and sharp howls to communicate with each other. Wang Chong had tested it before. The strongest villagers of the Wuxiang people could run even faster than war horses. I'm really looking forward to it. Wang Chong's eyes shone brightly. Looking into the distance, his eyes revealed a trace of anticipation. Let's go. Keep up. Starting from the skyline, the terrain was relatively low. But gradually, the terrain became higher and steeper, and the road became more and more difficult to traverse. Wang, after an unknown period of time, suddenly, a vast expanse of white fog surged over. "My lord, be careful. There's something strange about this fog." Gao Feng and Ye Yan's eyelids twitched. They instinctively felt a sense of danger. It was still daytime. When the group entered, the sun was right above their heads. This was not a rainy day. The appearance of this fog was too strange. Thinking back to the howls from before, the group became even more uneasy. Hee, don't be nervous. There are some underground springs at the bottom of this mountain range. Moreover, they are relatively large. The underground temperature is relatively high, so this fog is formed. There's nothing strange about it. Wang Chong smiled faintly, his expression calm and tranquil. This kind of tranquility affected the others. Gao Feng, Nie Yan, and the others all relaxed. The Wuxiang people were brave and aggressive. They were filled with hostility toward outsiders. And the place they lived in was filled with danger. The first line of defense was the lofty mountains and precipitous ridges, where one would be smashed to pieces if they accidentally fell. The white fog was the second line of defense. In the past, after learning that the Wuxiang people had killed a large number of foreign invaders, many people had tried to provoke them. But most of them had failed miserably. Many people could not even charge through the first line of defense, let alone the second. Wang Chong could be considered the only one who had succeeded. Different from the others, whether it was the Wuxiang people who came and went, or the thick white fog that floated in the mountains, Wang Chong never panicked. He even saw an underground spring spurting out of the ground, and determined the true cause of the white fog. "Take out your scabbards. Hold each other's weapons and follow me. This fog will disappear in the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. It's not very dangerous. The true danger lies in the ravines and abysses shrouded by the fog. If you fall in, even I won't be able to save you," Wang Chong said lightly. Chapter 695. The white fog was thick, and from time to time, it would accidentally touch the pebbles by their feet. Listening to the echoes of the pebbles falling down the cliff after a long time, everyone was shocked. On the other hand, Wang Chong took the lead, and he was calm as if he was taking a stroll in his own courtyard. Gao Feng and Nie Yan followed closely behind Wang Chong, the shock in their hearts growing stronger. The fog in front of them made it impossible to tell the direction and see anything clearly. However, Wang Chong did not panic at all. He didn't even look at where he was going, as if he knew where he was going. After an unknown amount of time, the surrounding fog gradually thinned. Gao Feng and Nie Yan were secretly delighted, knowing that they were about to leave the fog. None of you are working, yet you're asking me to dig. Aren't you afraid that I'll be kidnapped?" Just as the fog was about to disperse, the childish grumbling of a little girl suddenly came from the fog, accompanied by the sound of stones being kicked. "Marquis, this is?" Everyone turned to look at Wang Chong. "Don't make a sound. Follow me." Hearing this familiar voice, the smile on Wang Chong's face grew wider. Tian stepped on the fine, sharp rocks and walked in the direction of the voice in the fog. The little girl's grumbling became clearer and louder. "Dig every day, every month. Stupid hoe. Stupid hoe. Io, this is troublesome. The handle of the hoe is broken. No, we can't let Grandpa and the others know. Idiot, big idiot, idiot Grandpa. The little girl's grumbling got closer and closer. This time, even the subordinates that Wang Chong had brought with him noticed it. Each of them revealed a strange expression, with some doubt and some interest. Wang Chong ignored the subordinates behind him. In just a moment, following the direction of the grumbling, Wang Chong soon saw a little girl around 8 or 9 years old. Her hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she was carrying a bamboo basket that was even bigger than her body. She sat on a huge bare rock, and beside the rock was a twisted pine tree with a crown like a canopy. The little girl's back was to him, and Wang Chong could not see her face clearly. However, he could hear her grumbling, filled with dissatisfaction. Pa! As he looked, the sound of breaking rocks came from behind. The little girl was sitting under the pine tree and kicking her feet when she suddenly heard a sound coming from behind her. She was startled and slid down the rock with a whoosh, turning her head to look behind her. At this moment, Wang Chong finally saw her face. This was a little girl carved from jade. Although she was not quite the same as in his memory, he could still see the girl's face between her brows. The little girl carried a big medicinal basket on her back. In one hand, she held a broken wooden handle, and in the other, half a medicinal hoe. She must have accidentally broken it when she was grumbling. Seeing Wang Chong suddenly appear on the mountain, as well as a group of strangers, the little girl's face was full of fear. She suddenly shouted and broke into a run. 7th uncle, 9th uncle, bad news. Something's wrong. Bad people have come in. As she screamed, the little girl displayed agility and speed that did not match her age. She stomped on the ground with her small feet and quickly leapt out from the rock. She flew close to the ground and actually leapt out for about 60 to 70 feet. Between the sharp and craggy mountain rocks, she flashed a few times and quickly disappeared into the distance like a raccoon. When she reappeared, she was already 200 to 300 zhang away. At this time, it was only the blink of an eye. Is this little girl a human or a ghost? How can an 8 or 9-year-old girl be so fast? Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the group of military elites behind them were all dumbfounded. The speed and agility that the little girl displayed were at least at the true martial realm. But she was only 8 or 9 years old. The little girl, carrying a big medicinal basket on her back, was about to disappear. Wang Chong was in no rush, nor did he give chase. He only said one sentence. He only said, Xiaoyan, why are you running? Wang. Those words caused the little girl, who was running like a leopard in the distance, to tremble, as if she had been struck by lightning. Her body came to an abrupt stop in this seemingly impossible situation. Are you calling me? The little girl poked her head out from the rubble and looked back at Wang Chong in disbelief. Wang Chong nodded and smiled without saying a word. What did you call me just now? The little girl was shocked. Aren't you called Xiaoyan? Wang Chong said. How do you know my name? The little girl's eyes widened. She stopped and stood 20 zhang away, looking at Wang Chong through the rubble. Her round eyes carefully sized up Wang Chong and the entourage behind him. She had never encountered such a situation before. She had never seen these strangers before, but they actually knew her name. Not only do I know that you are called Xiaoyan, I also know that you have a pet called Luoluo, a 4-clawed red fox. Wang Chong said with a smile. As he spoke, he walked to the pine tree that the little girl had been squatting on and sat down on the rock. Impossible. The little girl's eyes widened. She swung the big medicinal basket on her back and sat down on the rubble. At this time, she was no longer afraid. Her curiosity towards Wang Chong suppressed everything else, including her fear. Only the villagers knew that she had secretly raised a white-clawed red fox. But even the villagers did not know that the fox was called Luoluo. How did the stranger know? How do you know my Luoluo? The little girl's eyes flashed. She was completely attracted by the stranger in front of her. You really haven't changed at all. Wang Chong smiled inwardly. She was still as curious as before. She had not changed at all from his memories. Didn't your grandfather tell you to gather herbs? Did you manage to gather them? Wang Chong changed the topic. A bunch of scoundrels. They only know how to bully me. There are rocks everywhere. Where can I find Wujian grass? Upon hearing Wang Chong's words, the little girl was reminded of her mission today. Fuming with rage, she kicked a rock by her feet away. The seemingly casual kick actually sent the rubble, which was the size of an adult's fist, flying 60 to 70 zhang away. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the dozen guards behind her could not stop their eyelids from twitching. This little girl's strength was truly astonishing. You want Wujian grass? That's simple. Feng Mu, bring it over. Yes, Marquis. A voice came from behind. Soon, a tall guard walked over with a huge box in his hand. Open it. Wang Chong raised his hand. The guard opened the lid, and instantly, a box full of medicinal herbs appeared in front of everyone. Wujian grass. Seeing the medicinal herbs in the box, the little girl's eyes lit up. She actually rushed over, completely forgetting that Wang Chong and the others were not from the village. Wow. Wujian grass. It's really Wujian grass. How did you know that I wanted to gather Wujian grass? Ha ha ha, this is great. With this Wujian grass, I can stay inside for 3 months. The little girl's face was filled with excitement. Her hands were full of Wujian grass, and she let out a tinkling laugh. Wang Chong could not help but laugh at this sight. Before the catastrophe, Wushang village had actually been very xenophobic. The unexpected failure of Li Sai's recruitment operation had reminded Wang Chong of this. This operation did not seem to be as easy as he had imagined. The more powerful a faction was, the more difficult it was to submit to others. If the people of Wushang had submitted so easily, the otherworldly invaders would not have suffered so many losses, and there would not have been less than a tenth of the 50 or 60,000 people of Wushang left. However, all lands under the heavens belonged to the king. After all, the people of Wushang were still in the Central Plains and had to obey the orders of the imperial court. As long as the method was appropriate, it was not impossible to recruit the people of Wushang. And this little girl called Fang Xiaoyan was the key to this. The people of Wushang were extremely xenophobic. As long as it was a stranger, they would immediately be attacked before they even had a chance to explain their purpose. Many people didn't even pass the first stage and had already failed. However, Wang Chong knew that there was a key figure in Wushang village who could gain the favor and approval of the people of Wushang through him. This person was Fang Xiaoyan. Wang Chong had entered through the skyline, not only because the terrain was relatively flat and easier to enter, but also because Wang Chong knew that Fang Xiaoyan was picking herbs here. I'll give you these Wujian grass. Wang Chong smiled. By the way, can you take me to see your grandfather? You know my grandfather? The little girl tilted her head and frowned in surprise. No, I don't. Wang Chong shook his head. Then I can't take you in. My grandfather said that I'm not allowed to bring strangers into the village. The little girl said with her head held high. Although I don't know your grandfather, I have a friend at your grandfather's place. Can you take me to see him? Wang Chong smiled and patted her head. The little girl's eyes showed a trace of doubt, but she soon narrowed her eyes in comfort. She seemed to enjoy the feeling of being patted on the head and being pampered. Although I don't know your grandfather, I have a friend at your grandfather's place. Can you take me to see him? Wang Chong smiled and patted her head. The little girl's eyes showed a trace of doubt, but she soon narrowed her eyes in comfort. She seemed to enjoy the feeling of being patted on the head and being pampered. Friend. Grandfather. My friend is at grandfather's place. Grandfather's friend. Then your grandfather's friend. No wonder you know so many things, and even know about my Luoluo. The little girl seemed to have figured something out. She opened her eyes and smiled happily. If you're grandfather's friend, then there's no problem. Come, I'll take you to see grandfather. Chapter 696. Marquis, just where did this girl come from? How is she so powerful? That's right. Although the Wujian grass in the box isn't heavy, the box isn't. How can she be so strong? Gao Feng and Nie Yin walked up to Wang Chong and whispered. Haha, this is Wushang village. You'll get used to it in the future. Wang Chong smiled. Straightening his robes, he got up and walked away. The voice of the little girl came from ahead. Hurry up. The little girl's speed was much faster than they had imagined. The further they went, the steeper the mountain became, and the harder it was to walk. But the little girl leading the way seemed to be flying. Her speed didn't decrease in the slightest. As the crowd watched from behind, they felt that the little girl was as agile as a leopard cat. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others were more and more surprised. When Wang Chong first chose Wuxiang as his fief and built a city here, they didn't think too much about it. But now, no one dared to make such a simple guess. No wonder young master would build a city here. It must be for this Wuxiang village, Gao Feng muttered to himself. Following beside Wang Chong, he gradually understood that every decision Wang Chong made was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. A little girl of only 8 or 9 years of age already possessed such astonishing talent. Whether it was speed or agility, she far surpassed everyone else. Even Gao Feng and Nie Yen felt that they couldn't keep up with her. It was easy to imagine just how powerful the other people in Wuxiang village were. Gao Feng and Nie Yen were getting more and more curious about this Wuxiang village. As they followed the little girl forward, the noise grew louder and louder. "Who is it? How dare you trespass into our Wuxiang village?" Suddenly, a thunderous voice came from the distant mountains. Before the voice could fade away, there was a loud rumble and a gust of wind. Before anyone could react, a boulder suddenly grew in size, smashing toward Wang Chong behind the little girl. In the blink of an eye, the rock was above Wang Chong's head. At that moment, everyone could clearly see that it was a huge rock with a diameter of 16 to 17 feet and a weight of 2 to 3,000 caddies. If such a huge rock were to fall, even steel would be dented, let alone flesh and blood. Buzz! When Wang Chong saw this, he smiled inwardly. He didn't even move. In the next moment, waves of air rolled out. The huge rock was still about 10 feet away from Wang Chong when it was stopped in midair by an invisible wall of air. It froze there motionless. In an instant, there was dead silence in all directions. Even the mountains in the distance were quiet. All eyes were staring at Wang Chong and the huge rock above his head in shock. Even the little girl turned around and looked at him with her mouth wide open. "Uncle Gio, you big idiot, why did you hit my friend?" The little girl suddenly turned around and roared angrily at the mountains in the distance. "What friend? Little Yen, they're not from the village. Don't be fooled." On the opposite cliff, an exasperated voice sounded. He sounded even angrier than the little girl. "Friend, I don't care who you are or what you're here for. Hurry up and get out of here while it's still not too late." "Uncle Gio, why can't I explain it to you? I already said that he's my friend, and they still have friends with Grandpa. Also, they gave me Wujian grass and know that my fox is called Luoluo. Stop making trouble and let us pass." The little girl put her hands on her hips, her eyes spitting fire. She pointed at the opposite side and scolded angrily. "Luoluo?" The voice on the other side hesitated for a moment. The voice became softer and softer, and a faint murmur came from afar. How did these guys know? Are they really the chief's friends outside? Not many people in Wuxiang village knew that the little girl's fox was called Luoluo, but Uncle Gio happened to be one of them. If he wasn't a villager, he would never know the name Luoluo. Wang Chong stood in the back, silently smiling as he watched the little girl negotiate with her clansmen. So she was like this when she was young. No wonder she grew up to be so hot-tempered. Wang Chong inwardly chuckled. In the distance, the Uncle Gio that the little girl spoke of finally made his choice. "Since you know Luoluo, you're at least not bad people. Forget it, I'll let you pass." As soon as he finished speaking, a figure suddenly emerged from a hidden crevice on the smooth cliff under everyone's gazes. Xiao xiao xiao. That person was like an ape, climbing up the smooth cliff as if he was flying. Every leap was over 30 meters, and the smooth cliff that was hundreds of meters high was as if they were walking on flat ground. They didn't even pause, and in a few blinks of an eye, they immediately disappeared without a trace. On the mountain, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the tinsome guards who had come with Wang Chong from the capital were all dumbstruck. Not even a profound martial realm expert could be so nimble. "I can't believe that such an expert could exist in such a remote and desolate place. Just how did they train to such a level?" Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others were completely dumbstruck. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have never believed that such an expert could exist in a place like this. Get used to it. These people aren't even the best experts of Wuxiang, and there are plenty of people like them who can climb mountains and cliffs, as if they were walking on flat ground in Wuxiang village. Wang Chong had a calm expression on his face. The people of Wuxiang would be his subordinates in the future, so how could he not understand their abilities? Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others had only seen the most ordinary abilities of the people of Wuxiang. Without this ability, the people of Wuxiang would never have become the strongest cavalry in the world. While the few of them were talking, a series of strange cries that sounded like apes and humans came from afar. In the blink of an eye, one after another, ape-like figures emerged from the seemingly empty mountains. They were either floating in the mountains or climbing up and down the cliffs. One figure after another, with strange howls, emerged from the mountains and appeared before everyone's eyes before quickly disappearing into the distant mountains. The personal attendants behind Wang Chong were completely dumbfounded. The place that Wang Chong had led them into was completely beyond their imagination. Follow them, Wang Chong called out, and quickly led everyone to catch up. In front, the little girl's thoughts were not so complicated. While everyone was in a daze, she had already run more than 100 feet. If not for the huge metal box that kept appearing in everyone's field of vision and jolting forward, the little girl would have already disappeared after such a short while. Revisiting an old place, Wang Chong's mood was the most relaxed he had ever felt. Everything here gave him a sense of familiarity, but it was not exactly the same. Ninth uncle should be Fang Xiaoyan's uncle Fang Jirqiu. I've heard Fang Xiaoyan say many times that this uncle dotes on her the most. It's a pity that after the catastrophe, since I'm here this time, I might as well bring him and Fang Xiaoyan out together. This way, I can avoid what happened later and fulfill Fang Xiaoyan's dream. Wang Chong thought to himself, but his footsteps did not slow down at all as he followed closely behind Fang Xiaoyan. Whether it was their attire or their appearance, Wang Chong and his party were completely out of place compared to the people of Wuxiang village. They were extremely eye-catching. So along the way, there were constantly people who appeared to stop them. At this time, Fang Xiaoyan's influence and status in Wuxiang village became apparent. No matter who appeared, Fang Xiaoyan carried the metal box that was even larger than her body and put one hand on her waist. She pointed at someone and scolded that person, forcefully scolding them away one by one. She led Wang Chong unimpeded all the way to the center of Wuxiang village. Along the way, more and more people from Wuxiang village appeared. Each of them flew up and down as if they were flying. It was a frightening sight. Look over there. When they were still some distance away from the village, a guard suddenly noticed something and shouted, pointing into the distance. When everyone followed the voice, they saw that on the right side of the road, near a steep cliff that was several hundred feet high, 20 to 30 villagers from Wuxiang village were sweating profusely and training in full swing. Each of these villagers from Wuxiang village was holding up a massive rock in one hand, constantly exhaling and yelling as they repeatedly raised and trained. These rocks had sharp edges, and each one weighed more than 1,000 jin. But in the hands of these villagers from Wuxiang village, they seemed as light as a feather. Lifting, pulling. These massive rocks were as steady as Mount Tai in their hands, not even trembling in the slightest. Each of them was using this special method to train their bodies, and some of the stronger ones were lifting rocks that weighed 2,000 to 3,000 jin. They were constantly raising and lowering them. These fellows, just where did they come from? Even among the great clans, no one would dare to use this method to train. All the guards behind Wang Chong were dumbfounded. The training method used by the people of Wuxiang village was one that would make even the illustrious military clans of the Tang dynasty blush with shame. The intensity of their training had definitely surpassed that of many of the great clans of the capital. Even these elites who had participated in the War of the Southwest, who had risked their lives on the battlefield of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, were inwardly flabbergasted. Wang Chong was only indifferent to this, not too surprised. Each place had its own people, and the people of Wuxiang were situated in the middle of a mountain range. The land was barren, with towering mountains and precipitous ridges everywhere. The environment was harsh. In this sort of environment, adapting to the local conditions was the best choice. Whether it was their ability to traverse the cliffs as if they were flat ground, or their ability to use rocks weighing several thousand jin to train their strength, this was the result of cultivating in this sort of environment. Chapter 697. Moreover, Wuxiang village was isolated from the rest of the world, and the villagers were extremely united. In the army, this quality would become absolute loyalty and obedience, and on the battlefield, it would become excellent teamwork and teamwork. The 5,000 Wuxiang cavalry came and went like the wind and fought fiercely, their strength far surpassing that of the other soldiers, including the Turkic cavalry and the Uzun Highland Barley soldiers. Moreover, they could coordinate with each other, as if they were on their own. If Wang Chang's mastery of the art of war was added to the mix, one could easily imagine the power of this force on the battlefield. This was a force that Wang Chang had always wanted to obtain. The calamity had not yet occurred, so there was still a chance. We're here. The village is up ahead. I still need to give the Wujian grass to 13th granduncle, so I can only bring you up to here. Just as he was deep in thought, the little girl in front of him suddenly spoke. After saying that, she turned around and skipped ahead. There, a group of people from Wuxiang village had gathered together, and a young man who seemed to be their leader was talking to them. The girl walked over, pointed at Wang Chang's group, and began to chatter with the young man, who seemed to be the leader. The young man turned his head to glance in the direction of Wang Chang's group, a sharp light flashing through his eyes. But he quickly turned his head back and nodded, as if agreeing to something with the girl. Haha, seventh brother, I'll leave everything to you. I'll be going first. The girl excitedly called out as she waved at Wang Chang's group. Then, with her large chest on her back, she excitedly walked off in another direction. In just a few moments, she had vanished into the rubble. Get ready. There might be a fierce battle coming up. Wang Chang suddenly said. Ah! But didn't that girl already tell us what to do? Gao Feng and Ye Yin were flabbergasted. On their journey here, they had already gotten used to the girl clearing the path for them. All the people who came up to investigate had been blocked by her. Why did they have to attack the moment they left? Don't worry too much. Just do as I say, Wang Chong said faintly. He flicked his sleeves and did not panic. With a smile, he took the initiative to walk towards the group of Wuxiang youths on the square, made of stone slabs. Wuxiang's trip had come to an end here. Wang Chong knew very well that his words, and the box full of Wujian grass were as good as it got. What's more, the person he met was a guy with sharp observation skills. On the opposite side, the seventh brother, the little girl mentioned, also strode over. However, unlike the gentleness he displayed in front of the little girl, seventh brother's expression was much sharper and colder in front of everyone. Surround them. Seventh brother waved his hand, and the first thing he did was surround Wang Chong and the others. Swoosh! The group of Wuxiang youths who had been following him leaped up as if they were flying. In an instant, they had surrounded Wang Chong, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the dozen or so guards from the capital. Careful! Clang, clang, clang. Cold light unsheathed. Almost at the same time, the expressions of Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others changed, and they immediately moved to protect Wang Chong. Seventh brother glanced at the swords in the hands of Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others, his eyes full of contempt. The outsiders that ninth uncle and the others spoke of are you, right? Friends of the patriarch. Humph, your words can only deceive Xiaoyan. Recently, the village has captured several outsiders. You're probably here for them, right? Seventh brother's gaze was extremely sharp. With a glance, he could see into the hearts of Wang Chong and the others. Hearing this, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others paled. If I was right, wasn't I? Put down your weapons and surrender, and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise, I'll kill them all. His last words were directed at his companions from Wuxiang village. You dare? Do you know who our young master is? To dare attack an official of the imperial court is a capital offense. Before Wang Chong could say anything, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others could no longer hold themselves back, and the other guards also showed signs of anger. Wang Chong was from a clan of ministers and generals, the young marquis that the Holy Emperor had personally conferred upon him. Everyone in the world knew that he was the son of Heaven's disciple, and had an incredibly revered status. These people actually dared to kill the nobles of the imperial court at the slightest provocation. They were simply tyrannical and lawless. I don't know about the imperial court or not. I only know that this is our Wuxiang village. You've intruded into our village, and even brought weapons, so you must die. As ninth brother spoke, his eyes turned even colder. He raised a hand and waved it into the distance. Swish, swish, swish. On the distant practice grounds and the nearby cliffs, the bare-chested Wuxiang soldiers began to fly over, their gazes cold. They moved with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, the area around Wang Chong's group began to flicker, and the number of people surrounding them increased by several times. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others all had cold expressions and were infuriated. From the stance of these people, they actually dared to attack them. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would have never dared to believe that there was such an arrogant faction in the Central Plains that completely disregarded the laws and dignity of the imperial court. Enough! Just when Gao Feng and the others were about to lose their patience, Wang Chong extended a hand and held them back. Leave this matter to me. The people of Wuxiang were a staunch and honest character that was publicly acknowledged by later generations. A fierce horse would never be so easily tamed, and this was even more true of the people of Wuxiang. Although Gao Feng and the others found this hard to accept, to Wang Chong, this was the true character of the people of Wuxiang. Qin Qiqing, you really haven't changed at all. Wang Chong faintly smiled, his first words causing the expression of seventh brother to change. Just who are you? How do you know my name? Qin Qiqing's pupils constricted, his expression extremely stern. Haha, not only do I know that your name is Qin Qiqing, but I also know that you often violate the rules of the village and sneak out of the village. Wang Chong smiled. Nonsense. Qin Qiqing's expression changed dramatically, and the corners of his eyes twitched uncontrollably, as if his secrets had been exposed. Brothers, take them down. Before the others could act, Qin Qiqing's body crouched slightly, and he shot forward like a venomous snake. Without any warning, steel clattered, and a ring of light fell from his body. In an instant, thick smoke rolled out and enveloped his body, blocking Wang Chong's line of sight. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, a pitch-black hand shot out of the thick smoke, leaving behind countless afterimages as it stabbed 3 times. Although it was just an ordinary body of flesh and blood, the sound of the 5 fingers stabbing out was like the sound of a sharp metal blade, and the slender fingers had a sword aura more than a foot long spitting out. If he was stabbed by these 5 fingers, Wang Chong had no doubt that even steel would be pierced through 5 holes. Ring of illusionary smoke. Hand of darkness. Wang Chong recognized at a glance that these were the 2 high-level techniques of Wuxiang village. The ring of illusionary smoke could confuse the opponent's vision, but it did not affect the cultivator in the slightest. Instead, it would increase one's agility and attack speed. The hand of darkness could only be used in conjunction with the ring of illusionary smoke. Once it was used, the entire arm would be as black as ink and incomparably sharp, like a sword. Once one's vision was confused by the black smoke, it was very easy for the opponent to deal a fatal blow and kill them instantly. Many of the people who had invaded Wuxiang village had died to this move, but to Wang Chong, this move was like showing off in front of an expert. Bang! With just one kick, before Qin Qiqing could even get close, he was kicked into the air by Wang Chong. With a rumble, he landed 7 or 8 zhang away, sending rubble flying. In that instant, the surroundings were completely silent. All of the Wuxiang villagers looked at Wang Chong, who stood out like a crane among chickens, with deep shock in their eyes. Although Qin Qiqing was not the strongest or the most powerful person in Wuxiang village, among his peers, he was definitely one of the more powerful experts. Moreover, It was not that the ring of illusionary smoke and the hand of darkness had never failed. But it was definitely not like this, where they had been defeated in one move. Most people did not even have the chance to see through the ring of illusionary smoke and the hand of darkness before they were already heavily injured and captured. Where did Xiao Yin bring these people from? The ring of illusionary smoke and the hand of darkness cannot be so easily defeated. This kid is strange. Everyone be careful. Don't be careless. From all directions, the Wuxiang villagers looked at Wang Chong and the others with a completely different gaze than before. The youth in front of them, who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, had a faint smile on his lips. Although he was young, he gave off the feeling that he could see through all of their tricks. This made all of the Wuxiang villagers feel that it was extremely inconceivable. Boom! With a loud bang, Qin Qiqing, who was 7 or 8 zhang away, suddenly stood up from the ground with a carp flip. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he locked onto Wang Chong. Impossible. I don't believe it. This is definitely a coincidence. Let's go again. Qin Qiqing gritted his teeth. Wang Chong's kick had greatly provoked him. With so many people watching, he could not maintain his dignity at all. He's still not as steady as before. Wang Chong could not help but laugh in his heart. After more than 20 years, the current Qin Qiqing was far from being as steady and insightful as before. He also lacked the strategic planning and calm leadership that came from experience. But this Qiqing is even more interesting, Wang Chong thought. He was used to seeing Qin Qiqing by his side, steady and mature. Suddenly seeing his old friend's reckless and impulsive appearance when he was young was a different kind of feeling. Boom! On the other side, Qin Qiqing did not know what Wang Chong was thinking. When he saw this outsider smile, he only felt more and more angry and disgusted. Divine ape art. Qin Qiqing took a step forward, and black smoke surged out from all of his acupoints. In the next moment his aura suddenly changed, and with a series of cracking sounds, his strength rose by several levels. From nimbleness, agility, and leaping, he became as heavy as a mountain. Roar! Chapter 698. In that instant, Qin Qiqing seemed to have become a completely different person. His entire being was different from before. He became tyrannical, dangerous, and filled with the desire to invade and attack. The divine ape technique was a divine technique that had been passed down in Wuxiang village for hundreds of years. It was a technique created based on the giant apes in the mountains. It could greatly increase a person's strength, agility, and speed. In Wuxiang village, this technique was of a much higher level than the ring of illusionary smoke and the hand of darkness. Roar! Qin Qiqing waved his hand and immediately merged with the divine ape formed by the black smoke behind him. Boom! Before he arrived, the technique arrived first. Qin Qiqing grabbed a huge rock that weighed more than 2,000 kilograms and threw it at Wang Chong, as if it was weightless. Following closely behind the huge rock, Qin Qiqing pounced at Wang Chong like a ferocious tiger pouncing on its prey. Boom! The huge rock was thrown down, and the same scene happened again. The huge rock was still dozens of feet away from Wang Chong when it was held up by an invisible force. It floated steadily in the air like Mount Tai. The divine ape technique. His stellar energy is leaking so much. It's obvious that he hasn't cultivated it to perfection. Wang Chong closed his eyes slightly and looked at Qin Qiqing, who was following closely behind the huge rock. His expression did not change at all. The divine ape that Qin Qiqing had transformed into had a crazy, tyrannical, and impactful aura. But it seemed to have no effect on him at all. Qi! Just as the divine ape that Qin Qiqing had transformed into rushed over and smashed down with its huge ape arm, Wang Chong's eyes opened slightly, and a bright light flashed in them. In that instant, Wang Chong moved from stillness and suddenly pointed a finger at the Moji acupuncture point under Qin Qiqing's armpit. In that instant Qin Qiqing's body froze like a punctured rubber ball. The black smoke around his body dissipated, and the huge divine ape quickly returned to its original appearance. Impossible! Who are you? Qin Qiqing's body staggered and retreated. His eyes were completely fixed on Wang Chong, and they were filled with fear and disbelief. Wuxiang village had very little contact with the outside world. So outsiders had no way of knowing the martial arts here. Most of the people who invaded Wuxiang village didn't even understand the martial arts of Wuxiang village before they were captured or seriously injured. However, the feeling that Wang Chong gave him was as if he knew all of his secrets and flaws. The mighty ape art of Wuxiang village was no secret to him. In the beginning, Wang Chong gave him the impression that he was an unwelcome outsider. But now, in Qin Shiqing's eyes, these outsiders had become unfathomable. At the end of every month, the Yujing acupoint, Yuanchuan acupoint, and Longqi acupoint must be an unbearable pain. This is because you didn't cultivate properly, causing your qi to divert. Try circulating your qi through the Pansha, Yongquan and Longwei acupoints. In about 3 days, you should be able to solve the problem of your stellar energy diverting and your meridians convulsing. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Qin Shiqing's eyes widened, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. Impossible. Impossible. This was absolutely impossible. Qin Shiqing's mind rumbled like thunder. Even the fact that Wang Chong had broken through his mighty ape art with one finger was far less of an impact than these few words. The mighty ape art had flaws, and according to each person's talent, aptitude and cultivation situation, the flaws were also different. Furthermore, no one would tell their own flaws to others. This meant that everyone was the only one who knew where their flaws were. The Yujing, Yuanchuan, and Longqi acupoints. Qin Shiqing hadn't even told the people closest to him about these 3 acupoints. How did this 16 or 17-year-old youth know that these were his weaknesses? Moreover, these 3 acupoints would only act up at the end of the month. This was something that only those who had cultivated the mighty ape art would know. How did this person know? At this moment, Qin Shiqing suddenly had a feeling that he had never felt before. His scalp was going to explode. How dare you attack Brother Qicheng? Everyone, let's attack together and kill them. Before Qin Shiqing could open his mouth, an angry voice suddenly came from the side. The people of Wuxiang village were the most united. Seeing that Qin Shiqing had suffered at the hands of Wang Chong twice in a row, everyone was filled with righteous indignation and anger. Wang, it wasn't clear who was the first to pounce, but then a second, a third, a fourth from all directions, figures pounced one after another. Black smoke billowed and metal clanged. Halos that were completely different from those of the outside world were released from the bodies of these Wuxiang villagers and fell down. Halo of mystifying smoke, hand of darkness, mighty ape art, wood vine art, giant rock ring. Halos accompanied by stellar energy of various colors were released from the bodies of these Wuxiang villagers. Be careful. Protect the young master. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and a group of guards all pulled out their sabers and swords. Their expressions were tense as they guarded around Wang Chong. Roar! A series of roars came from all directions. However, the first wave of attacks were large boulders that weighed thousands of jin. These boulders tumbled through the air, whistling through the air as they came crashing down toward the group. At this moment, all the guards who had experienced the War of the Southwest revealed nervous expressions. Even in their view, the strength of the Wuxiang villagers made them extremely powerful opponents. With so many of the Wuxiang villagers working together to attack, everyone instantly felt an enormous pressure. They all sensed the thick stench of death. This obscure little place on the Silk Road to the west was definitely as dangerous as a dragon's pool or a tiger's den. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, the two of you just need to protect yourselves. Leave these people to me. Just when the mood was at its most tense, Wang Chong's calm voice resounded through the air. In an instant, everyone felt a surge of power that made them feel at ease. Rumble! A powerful wave of energy exploded from Wang Chong's body, sweeping through the north, south, east, and west. All the falling boulders were still several zhang away, when they were frozen in place in the air. Kill him! Charging into our Wuxiang village, and still acting so arrogantly, even daring to attack seventh brother. Does he really think we can't deal with him? Don't be rash. Capture him and hand him over to the clan leader. With furious howls, the powerful and ferocious Wuxiang villagers charged at Wang Chong. Although they were not carrying any weapons, their fingers, palms, arms, and bodies had all been trained to be as tough as steel. Young master, Gao Feng's panicked voice came from behind him. Don't be in such a rush. Wang Chong's voice was as calm as ever. As he gazed at the wushang descending from the sky, his lips curled into an even wider smile, his voice calm and confident. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. A voice that was neither loud nor soft resounded in everyone's ears. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong used the number 1 evil art of the Central Plains. There were cries of alarm as the powerful wushang villagers began to spin in the air like kites with their strings cut. Not a single one of the wushang villagers could land, and not a single one of them could struggle free of this suction. The 40-some wushang villagers floated in the air like puppets controlled by strings. Cries of alarm filled the air, and even the guards behind Wang Chong were stunned by this sight. Compared to the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong's strength was even more profound, more powerful, and more unfathomable. The 40-some wushang villagers, who were at least at the true martial or profound martial realm, floated in the air, spinning around and around, faster and faster and fiercer, all of them unable to control themselves. This was a shocking sight to behold. Marquis is getting stronger and stronger. In the rear, the guards who had followed Wang Chong from the capital looked up at the sky in shock. The wushang villagers had seen how easily they could traverse the cliffs and walls, and they had also seen how they could use boulders weighing several thousand jin to train. All of them had prepared themselves for a fierce battle. But to everyone's surprise, Wang Chong's one move had sent these fierce wushang flying into the air, all of them sucked in. Not a single one of them had been able to get through. They had prepared themselves for a major battle, only to discover that Wang Chong had single-handedly dealt with all of them. Marquis' strength truly is advancing by leaps and bounds. It's unfathomable. Everyone was stunned. Bang bang bang. On the other side, Wang Chong paid no attention to the people behind him. He stood motionless, looking up at the sky, the smile on his lips growing wider. The great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art could not only be used to devour the energy of an opponent, but it could also be transformed into a powerful martial art technique. This enormous suction force could push around any martial artist who was weaker than oneself, moving them around and toying with them in the palm of one's hand. The wushang villagers were brave and fierce by nature, the best warriors on the battlefield. Wang Chong had even better plans for them, so he naturally would not suck away their inner energy and heavily injure them. My leg. Damn it, my inner energy is in complete chaos. I can't move at all. Mine is the same. My inner energy has completely gone awry. Bastard, just what kind of evil art did you use? Tell the clan elder. Quickly tell the clan elder to have Granduncle Jiao and the others come. These people are too strong. We can't deal with them. Several dozen wushang villagers fell to the ground, their eyes filled with panic. Their injuries were not heavy, but their inner energy had completely gone awry. This made them feel even more uneasy and shocked than when Wang Chong had heavily injured them. This had completely surpassed their understanding of martial arts. Bastard! Who are you people? Just what do you want in our village? Chapter 699. What am I doing? Didn't I say it already? I'm looking for a few friends. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Although Qin Jiuqing's martial arts were not bad, he was not the Qin Jiuqing of the future. In the Wushang Iron Cavalry, Qin Jiuqing was ranked last among the 10 generals under Wang Chong. If he wanted to grow into the future Lord Jiao, who could devise strategies, he would probably need some time. Now was not the time to talk or interact with him too deeply. Let's go. Wang Chong waved his hand and stepped over the wushang villagers, continuing forward. If he wanted to recruit the wushang villagers, he had to go through the wushang village chief, who was also the grandfather of the little girl, Fang Xiaoyan. You still dare to be so impudent in our wushang village? Do you really think this is still your territory? Just when Wang Chong was about to step past the wushang villagers and enter the village, a bone-chilling voice rang out in his ear. You're right, Wang Chong. In that instant, it was as if they had gone from a hot summer to a cold winter. Everyone felt their bodies shiver. Then, they saw a huge stone fall from the sky, smashing towards Wang Chong. What is that? A guard suddenly cried out involuntarily. At first glance, Everyone thought that it was a huge stone. However, when the stone opened its fingers, everyone suddenly realized that it was not a stone at all, but a huge stone palm. Boom! The stone fist smashed down and the earth shook. Billowing dust rose into the sky and spread everywhere. In front of the stone fist, Wang Chong's robes fluttered. He stood not far away and dodged the attack by a hair's breadth. It's him. Wang Chong squinted his eyes and looked up at the sky. There was a solemn look in his eyes, completely different from the relaxed look he had before. In that instant, everyone could clearly see that what appeared in front of Wang Chong was not a huge rock, but a 30-meter-tall stone giant that looked like a military general. When everyone looked up, the giant only had one hand and one leg. But in the next moment, the cliffs on both sides rumbled loudly. Cracks appeared on the precipitous cliffs and soon, huge rocks broke out of the cliffs under the control of an invisible force, flying towards the stone giant's right shoulder along with countless gravel. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, an identical stone arm appeared out of thin air. The assembly was complete, and it appeared before everyone's eyes. Arms, right leg and left ear. In a short period of time, the stone giant was completely formed. Everyone raised their heads, seeing clearly that this was a giant that looked like an ancient general. His body was covered in stone armor, his expression dignified, making one feel intimidated. Furthermore, he was over 30 meters tall, which made everyone look like ants beneath his feet, tiny and minuscule. Stone General. As this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, he instantly recognized him. Stone General was one of the best martial arts of Wuxiang village. It could control all the rocks in a radius of 100 zhang, transforming one into a stone giant that looked like an ancient general. This was the Stone General. This martial art was extremely powerful, and the Stone General that it transformed into was extremely powerful, belonging to the imperial martial realm. Moreover, as long as there was a large amount of stone around, the Stone General could be constantly repaired. This also meant that those who cultivated the Stone General were basically invincible. Moreover, with such thick stone armor, no weapon would be able to truly injure the martial artist inside the Stone General. This was one of the powerful aspects of the Stone General martial art. Wuxiang village was surrounded on all sides by towering mountains and precipitous ridges. What it didn't lack the least was hard stone. Thus, in this sort of environment, the Stone General's greatest power could be displayed. But this wasn't the only thing that Wang Chong cared about. There weren't many people in Wuxiang village that could use the Stone General, and Wang Chong could only think of one person who could do so. Huang Batian, one of Wuxiang village's outermost protectors. Before the Great Calamity, anyone who charged into the heart of the village would first encounter Huang Batian. Of the many protectors of Wuxiang village, his Stone General was the most superb. He was a classic example of an imperial martial expert, and his strength was far above Qin Qiqing's. He was one of the backbone forces of Wuxiang village. When the otherworldly invaders attacked Wuxiang village, he had used Wuxiang village's unique geographical advantage to block 5 or 6,000 of them, almost single-handedly guarding a single position. In Wuxiang village, this person had been rather difficult to deal with. Alas, Huang Batian later died in battle during the Great Calamity. He was one of the first core forces of Wuxiang village to die in battle. I didn't think that I'd run into a martial maniac. Wang Chong raised his head and gazed at the towering, powerful, 30-meter Stone General. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't feel the slightest fear. Back when Fang Xiaoyan hadn't reached the peak of the martial path, she would occasionally bicker with him about this Stone General of hers, her protector Uncle Huang Batian, who had reached the acme of perfection. Although his strength was astonishing and he hated foreigners to the core, deep in his heart, Huang Batian was a true man. He was addicted to martial arts, and his greatest weakness was that anyone who could withstand 3 of his moves would obtain his favorable impression. Anyone who could defeat him would rapidly change Huang Boshan's attitude toward them. No matter where they came from, no matter if they were good or evil, Huang Batian would immediately treat them as a brother, acknowledge them, and treat them as one of his own. There was once an expert of the Uzan, who had been chased by experts of the Tang dynasty, and accidentally stumbled into Wuxiang village. In the end, he fought a great battle with Huang Batian. Huang Batian actually defended him in every possible way. And in the end, he almost ended up fighting with one of his own people. In the end, the villagers had no choice but to let him go. He clearly knew that his opponent was an Uzun who had appeared in the Tang dynasty with ill intentions. But Huang Batian still did so. From this, one could imagine just how ferocious his martial obsession was. However, although Huang Batian's personality was well known in Wuxiang village, almost no outsider knew of it. Even Fang Xiaoyan, who liked to bicker with him, would never have imagined that he would one day have to fight with her protector uncle. This is going to be interesting. If I can withstand 3 moves, I can win his favorable impression. Wang Chong thought to himself as he gazed at the massive stone general. He seemed to be able to see through the layers of stone armor to the chest of the stone general, where a mysterious middle-aged man was sizing him up. To be honest, Wang Chong was quite curious about this protector uncle Fang Xiaoyan spoke of, who had a strange personality, who was addicted to martial arts, and who had ultimately died in the Great Calamity. Many of the experts of Wuxiang village had died in the Great Calamity. To Wang Chong, this was actually quite a pity. You're quite fast, but do you think you can outrun me? The stone general's voice was full of energy, like a great bell ringing down from above. Just as Wang Chong was thinking, the giant stone howled as Huang Batian sucked up a boulder from the ground, and with a thunderous boom, smashed it toward Wang Chong. The first boulder was still in the air when Huang Batian stomped down, causing the earth to crack. Boulders weighing several thousand jin were sucked into the hands of the 30-meter-tall stone general, and then shot toward Wang Chong like cannonballs. A second boulder, a third, a fourth boulder after boulder flew toward Wang Chong like a barrage of cannons. In the howling winds, a boulder flew over Wang Chong's head, enveloping even Gao Feng and Ye Yin in its path. Huang Batian's attack was clearly not just directed at Wang Chong. All the intruders were treated the same. Careful, the guards were getting more and more shocked, as they dodged in every direction. This Wuxiang village was shrouded in mysteries, and they were getting more and more astonished. Those villagers who could move as if they were flying could be ignored. But now, a random person had appeared who could control the earth element of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The feeling he gave off was not one bit inferior to Longkimba, the leader of the 5 tiger generals, under Uzun Great General Huaxu Wuzong's command in the War of the Southwest. It would have been fine if Wuxiang village was some famous strategic town, but this place just had to be remote and desolate. If not for Marquis mentioning it and bringing them here, they would have never even known that such a place existed. Thus, it was easy to imagine the shock the crowd felt when an imperial martial expert had casually appeared out of nowhere. There's no need to worry. Leave this stone giant to me. At their most panicked and uneasy moment, Wang Chong's reassuring voice rang out in their ears. Who? The 1,000-jin boulder that was originally smashing towards Gao Feng, and the others suddenly shook in the air when it was still several zhang away from them. With a schwa, it drew an arc in the air and actually turned around. Its speed did not decrease, and it smashed towards the mountain-like stone general in front of them. Buzz! All the villagers of Wuxiang were stunned, and even Huang Bashi's stone general clearly trembled. It was clear that even this martial maniac of Wuxiang's outer protector was shocked by Wang Chong's move. Haha, if I were you, I would never use this move. Wang Chong's laughter was still echoing through the air when a second, third, and fourth boulder began to howl through the air. With a flick of Wang Chong's finger, they all shot back at the stone general with astonishing speed. Not a single one of the boulders that Huang Batian had thrown out had been able to pose any real threat to him. Damn it! Huang Batian was infuriated. With a fierce punch, he sent Wang Chong's boulder-smashing fist back at him. He had lived in Wuxiang for so long, but he had never encountered such a situation. I truly underestimated you. It seems like a little move like this is completely useless against you. But you really shouldn't have used such a method to provoke me. I've stood guard here for so long, but no one has ever dared to act so impudently in front of me. Now pay the price. Chapter 700. As soon as the stone spear appeared, an invisible energy began to transform it. The inside of the stone grew denser and denser, and the stone powder on its surface began to scatter, revealing a spiral pattern. Bang! In a flash of lightning, the giant stone spear smashed into the ground where Wang Chong had been standing, leaving a giant hole in the ground. Pieces of stone flew dozens of feet into the air, and dust filled the air. You think you can escape? The stone general's thunderous voice resounded through the world. Just as Wang Chong leapt up to dodge, the stone general closed in. With a speed and agility that didn't seem to match its massive body, it punched at Wang Chong. Before the fist even got close, its enormous strength left a long ripple in the air. Everything in a radius of several dozen feet emitted a teeth-aching sound, and everything began to twist. If one were to be struck by this fist, there was no doubt that they would be smashed to smithereens. Ha ha ha, Protector Huang. Your stone general truly has reached perfection, but alas, it's still lacking in maturity. Wang Chong had been heartily laughing when he first spoke, but his last words had become incomparably cold and solemn. Bang! In the blink of an eye, countless people watched as Wang Chong's robes fluttered in the wind, a smile on his lips. Amidst Huang Boshan's attacks, he seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll through the park, constantly dodging Huang Boshan's attacks. But at the last moment, Wang Chong suddenly stood on the tip of his right foot and stepped on the stone general's giant fist. Bang! With this light step, the stone general's fist was pulled down by a tremendous force. With a boom, Wang Chong's foot landed on the ground, sending up a cloud of dust. Buzz! All the Wuxiang villagers who saw this scene widened their eyes. Huang Batian was the outermost protector of Wuxiang village, and his strength was obvious to all. People had tried to force their way into Wuxiang before, but most of them had been stopped as far as Huang Batian. No one had ever managed to tear off Huang Boshan's right arm. It's useless. You're no match for me here. Huang Boshan's voice was as cold and solemn as ever. Even though one of his arms had been torn off, it didn't affect him in the slightest. Rumble! Just as Wang Chong's right arm was about to fall, Huang Boshan's stone general thrust the spear in his left hand at Wang Chong. At the same time, cracking sounds could be heard as countless rubble began to rise from the ground and fly toward Huang Boshan's right arm. In the blink of an eye, an identical stone arm had taken shape. Boom! His 5 fingers flexed, and Huang Boshan's second fist smashed towards Wang Chong. Boom! 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 Huang Batian was thoroughly enraged. His fists, along with his spear, rained down upon Wang Chong. Everything within a radius of several thousand feet was within the range of his attack. Each of Huang Boshan's fists carried several thousand jin of weight. Even steel would be pulverized by a single punch from him, let alone a body of flesh and blood. And what was even more dreadful was that the stone general was incredibly fast. When combined with its immense strength, it was enough to make any opponent pale in comparison. I want to see just how long you can dodge for. Huang Batian sneered. Cracking, his right hand grasped out, and in the blink of an eye, another 50-meter-long stone spear was pulled out from the ground. With these 2 spears in hand, the stone general's attack speed and threat multiplied. But no matter how ferocious Huang Boshan's attacks were, Wang Chong's voice remained as calm as ever, clearly echoing through the rain of stone spears. I'm not dodging. I'm just seeing the stone general. Since you want to fight with me, I'll do as you wish. As he spoke, Wang Chong suddenly changed his usual demeanor. Thump! Wang Chong pushed off the ground and shot forward like an arrow, instantly piercing through the gaps in Huang Boshan's storm of attacks, and heading straight for the stone general's chest. Great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art. On the stone general's chest, Wang Chong's fingers were spread wide like a sword. His palm holding his body up, he thrust it deep into the stone general's chest. The great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art that he had inherited from the evil emperor was instantly activated, causing a massive attractive force to erupt. The little Yin-Yang art required physical contact, and the little Yin-Yang sword, as well as a host of other restrictions. But the great Yin-Yang Heaven Creation Art was different. Wang Chong didn't even need to touch his opponent to be able to absorb their energy. Buzz! Under countless shocked gazes, The 30-meter-tall stone general maintained its ferocious attack at the last moment. But its entire body was frozen in place, motionless. Impossible. Just what evil art did you use? A middle-aged man's panic-stricken and shocked voice exploded from the stone general's chest. The moment Wang Chong activated the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art, the stellar energy in his body began to wildly surge out. Even more frightening was that he instantly lost control of the stellar energy in his body. His entire body was trapped within the stone general, unable to move. Rumble. In a place that no one could see, boundless waves of stellar energy flowed into Wang Chong's body. With the support of Huang Boshan's internal energy, Wang Chong's already formidable internal energy soared once more, charging towards an even higher realm. Not good. Protector is in danger. There's something strange about this outsider. Everyone attack together. Hurry and help Protector deal with him. Seeing Huang Batian restrained, the people of Wuxiang village began to panic. There was not a single person who had come to Wuxiang village who did not have their tail between their legs. Many outsiders had been captured without the Protector even needing to appear. But now, even the Protector had been captured. To the people of Wuxiang village, this was an unacceptable and unimaginable development. Form the formation. Protect young master. At the same time, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and a group of elite guards also began to move. In the blink of an eye, before the rest of the Wuxiang villagers could arrive to help, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the Tinsum elite guards had already formed a small and tight formation. This was the Dragon Snake Formation that Wang Chong had created after the Southwestern War. The Dragon Snake Array did not require many people. A dozen or so people would be able to form a small-scale Dragon Snake Array. It could be used for both offense and defense. Furthermore, it could condense the strength of a dozen or so people into one. Like a sharp knife, it could unleash strength that far exceeded normal standards. Whether it was a group attack or an expert far stronger than oneself, the Dragon Snake Formation could unleash its greatest power. But the Dragon Snake Formation had extremely high demands on the soldiers. Not only did it require the soldiers themselves to reach an extremely high level of strength, it also required excellent teamwork. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others were precisely the Dragon Snake teams that had been trained to the highest level after Wang Chong had created the Dragon Snake Formation. They were also the most capable and the strongest. This was also why Wang Chong had brought them with him into Wuxiang village. Kill. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the others swiftly formed the formation. In the distance, the other members of Wuxiang village also noticed this and began to charge over. Both sides were seething with killing intent, and it seemed like a fierce battle was about to break out. But at this moment, stop! A voice floated down from the sky. The fingers of Wang Chong's right hand moved slightly, and he shot back from the stone general's chest like lightning. He swayed lightly in the air, slowed down, and landed lightly on the ground without stirring up a speck of dust. As Wang Chong landed on the ground, countless rocks fell from the sky with a rumble. The 30-meter-tall stone general instantly collapsed, leaving only 2 legs and half of its body standing on the ground. And where the stone general's chest had been, the rocks collapsed, revealing a middle-aged man in his 30s. His face was weathered, and he looked extremely steady-going. Enforcer Huang, can we end this battle? Wang Chong looked up at the middle-aged man and smiled faintly. His expression was relaxed and his bearing was calm. If not for the fact that the ground was in ruins, and there were rolling boulders everywhere, it would be hard to believe that he had just experienced an intense battle. The battlefield was deathly silent. Even the charging villagers of Wuxiang and Qin Qiqing stopped and stared at the two in a daze. The ground was silent. The middle-aged man sat on the tall, broken stone general, looking down at Wang Chong. His eyes flickered, and no one could tell what he was thinking. At this moment, no one in Wuxiang knew what had just happened except for Wang Chong and Huang Batian. The reason the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art was known as the #1 evil art in the world, even one of the most powerful and legendary of the 10 great arts of the Central Plains, was not just because it was so powerful that it could easily defeat anyone of the same level. but also because anyone who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art could easily challenge opponents a level higher than them, or even several levels higher. Many experts of the martial Tao world, even if they were stronger and stronger than those who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art, would ultimately suffer a crushing defeat and die at the hands of those who cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art. One could easily imagine the fame and ferocity of the world's #1 evil art. However, Wang Chong had come to subjugate the villagers of Wuxiang, not to kill them. Thus, Wang Chong had controlled his energy this entire time. He had sucked Huang Boshan's energy back into his body, making it impossible for him to control the Stone General. Buzz! Wang Chong looked up at the Stone General. The middle-aged man's mouth opened and closed, but before he could say anything, the situation suddenly changed. Bang! Chapter 701. In the blink of an eye, Wang Chong had returned to normal. He turned his gaze to the cliff on his right. But at this moment, several large boulders tumbled down the cliff like bolts of lightning, crashing around Wang Chong. Wang Chong didn't care at first, but after taking 2 steps forward, his vision suddenly darkened and everything vanished. Wang Chong's expression instantly changed. At almost the same time, there was a flash of light, and 2 figures flew down from the cliff. One was a yellow-robed elder in his 50s with graying sideburns. The other was a middle-aged woman in her 40s with a beauty mark at the corner of her eye. Batian, hurry and leave. I've already used an array to temporarily trap him. Hurry and call the patriarch and elders to deal with him. Rorong, are you alright? The yellow-robed elder supported the middle-aged woman, his face full of concern. Wansher Batian, be careful. This young man is very strange. My psychic thorns rarely fail, but when I use my psychic energy to deal with him, I only managed to control him for a moment before suffering a mental backlash. I've never encountered such a situation before. The middle-aged woman's face was pale, and she seemed to be in great pain. Elder Du, Elder Fong Yu. Huang Batian stood on top of the damaged Stone General, hesitating to speak. In truth, Wang Chong had already shown him mercy. Unfortunately, Elder Du and Elder Fong had arrived too quickly. Before he could say anything, Elder Fong had already attacked him with the psychic thorns, while Elder Du had thrown down the boulders and formed an array to trap him within. Huang Batian was now riding a tiger, and it was already too late to say anything. Ha ha ha, what a powerful array. Being able to see it today made this trip worth it. Just at this moment, a familiar voice suddenly rang out in their ears. The 3 of them trembled and turned their heads at the same time. They saw a familiar voice. His robes fluttered in the wind, and he looked valiant and heroic as he calmly walked out from the formation. Behind him, Gao Feng, Nye Yin, and the others also walked out. All was silent. Elder Du, Elder Fong, and Huang Batian on top of the Stone General were all stunned, their eyes filled with disbelief. This is impossible. It's impossible for anyone to escape from my 4 symbols yin-yang soul trap so quickly. Old Man Du was dumbfounded, as if he had received a huge shock. On the 2 sides, Huang Batian, Elder Fong, and the other villagers of Wuxiang, who knew about the 4 symbols yin-yang soul bewildering formation, felt waves of shock in their hearts. The 4 symbols yin-yang soul trap was the most powerful formation in Wuxiang village. Throughout history, only a few people could master it, and they would only use it when they encountered a very powerful opponent. The 4 symbols yin-yang soul trap contained the 8 gates of life, injury, rest, stop, and view. Moreover, it would change with time. If one were to accidentally step on the wrong spot, it would be a dead end. As for the exit formation, that was something only Elder Du and the others in control of formations knew about. Even Huang Batian would find it very difficult to escape if he were trapped in a formation. What's going on? No one knows how to get out of the 4 symbols yin-yang soul trap. Is he really related to the patriarch? Huang Boshan's eyes flickered with bewilderment. The news that a group of outsiders had followed Fang Xiaoyan into the village had long since reached him. As the village's protector, he was well aware of anyone who entered or left the village. These people could only deceive a little girl like Fang Xiaoyan. Huang Batian had never believed them from start to finish. But now, as he watched Wang Chong so easily walk out of the formation, Huang Boshan's faith was shaken. For Wang Chong to be able to walk out so quickly meant that he definitely knew how to get out. If he didn't have an inextricable relationship with the village, then none of this could be explained. Elder Du Batian, leave first. I'll deal with him. The middle-aged woman called Elder Fong nervously said. Right now, she was the only one who could obstruct Wang Chong. Wait a moment. Elder Du, Elder Fong, these people aren't bad people. The wind howled as Huang Batian hurriedly jumped down from the damaged stone general and tried to stop them. If they really harbored evil intentions, they would have already attacked me. Batian, what nonsense are you spouting? Do you not differentiate between friend and foe? Damn it, don't you see the time? Why are you acting like a martial idiot at a time like this? Elder Du and Elder Fong knew that Huang Boshan's old habits had flared up. Although Huang Batian was powerful, as long as anyone defeated him, this fellow would unscrupulously favor the other party and treat them as his friends. The most typical manifestation of this person isn't a bad person, or these people aren't bad people. Every time Huang Batian acted up, the entire village would have a headache. But he just had to be stubborn, leaving everyone at their wits' end. Elder Fong, Elder Du, this isn't a martial idiot. Since he was able to break the 4 symbols Yin-Yang Soul Trap, he definitely isn't an ordinary outsider. Moreover, didn't they follow Xiaoyan in? If they harbored evil intentions, how could Xiaoyan still be safe and sound? And hasn't no one died in the village yet? Huang Batian said. Elder Du and Elder Fong were dumbfounded. Haha, Protector Huang understands that I have no ill intentions. Otherwise, given my strength, everyone should also understand that Wuxiang village wouldn't be in its current state. Wang Chong heartily laughed, and as he spoke he began to slowly walk toward the trio. Wang Chong's eyes brightened as he glanced at Elder Fong and Elder Du that Huang Batian had spoken of. Wuxiang village truly was a place of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. One could casually use a powerful array, while the other had extremely powerful psychic energy. These were extremely rare in the martial world, but Wuxiang village had 2 of them. Let him in. All of you withdraw. Suddenly, a dignified and aged voice rang out from within the village. The voice was loud and clear like a great bell. Everyone trembled when they heard this voice, and all the villagers of Wuxiang revealed expressions of extreme respect. It's the chief. Elder Du and Elder Fong glanced at each other, then turned to glance at Wang Chong with complicated expressions. Although they were unwilling, the chief had spoken. No matter how unwilling they had no choice but to step aside. Young man, I don't care where you come from or what your background is, but you'd best be smart here and not act rashly. Didn't you want to see our chief? Go on in. As Elder Du and Elder Fong spoke, they stepped to the side and opened up a path. Many thanks. Wang Chong smiled and led the people behind him into the depths of Wuxiang village. Qin Qiqing had been defeated, Huang Batian had also been defeated by him, and the array had been broken. Psychic energy attacks were useless. Although the appearance of the chief of Wuxiang village was very unexpected, it was all within Wang Chong's expectations. I can finally see the chief of Wuxiang village. I'm really looking forward to it. Wang Chong smiled as he brushed past Huang Batian, Elder Fong, and Elder Du. The chief of Wuxiang village commanded 50 to 60,000 clansmen of Wuxiang. In Wuxiang village, he was the most powerful existence. In all the legends of Wuxiang village, the chief of Wuxiang village was related. When Wang Chong had first arrived at Wuxiang village, the person he had wanted to see the most was this chief of Wuxiang. Unfortunately, in the Great Calamity, all the elites of Wuxiang village had been lost, including this mysterious chief of Wuxiang village. He had also died in battle against the otherworldly invaders. It was said that mountains of otherworldly invader corpses had been found around his body. Of all the foreign invaders who died in battle, about half of them had died around him. When Wang Chong had first heard of this, he had been rather respectful. Unfortunately, he had never had the chance to meet him. The appearance of Wuxiang village like a comet had shocked the entire world, but it had disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Following the Great Calamity, the chief, elders, protectors, and all the core members of Wuxiang village had died in battle. Many secrets regarding Wuxiang village had also been buried underground. Even though some of the villagers of Wuxiang village had survived, and had even become subordinates of Wang Chong, the famous Wuxiang Iron Cavalry, many core secrets that only the elders knew had also been lost. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The surroundings were filled with shadows and people. As Wang Chong and his tinsome subordinates walked into Wuxiang village, many of the villagers of Wuxiang village slid down from the cliffs and followed them, their gazes filled with vigilance as they looked at Wang Chong and the others. Wang Chong was calm and at ease, as if he hadn't noticed them at all. He had injured Qin Qiqing and the others, and then defeated Huang Batian. It would be strange if the villagers of Wuxiang village had any good impressions of him. All of you disperse. An elderly but dignified voice came from within the village. As soon as this voice rang out, the surroundings fell silent. All the villagers of Wuxiang village hesitated. Although they were still somewhat unwilling, the vast majority of them quickly scattered to the sides, climbing up the lofty mountains and vanishing without a trace. Only a small portion of them remained where they had been, but the atmosphere was completely different from before. Wang Chong walked along a 6-meter-wide stone path that had clearly been excavated into the village, carefully observing his surroundings as he walked. Although from the outside, Wuxiang village appeared to be filled with lofty mountains and precipitous ridges. Once he entered the village and passed through the edge of the village guarded by Huang Batian, everything became completely different. The villagers of Wuxiang village began to build a smooth path that led into the village. From the outermost perimeter, after several hundred meters, flat stone bricks began to appear. At the end of the path, tens of thousands of stone bricks spread out to form a massive plaza. Here, Wang Chong finally saw simple and unadorned stone houses built from rough mountain rocks. In front of these houses and the plaza, there were many people standing. Unlike the outskirts of Wuxiang village, as soon as he stepped into this plaza, Wang Chong immediately sensed a solemn aura, as if he had stepped into a military camp. In the plaza, all eyes were on him. Chapter 702. Marquis. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from the plaza, quickly attracting Wang Chong's attention. The people of Wuxiang village would never call him Marquis. Those who would call him Marquis and know his identity were, Marquis, it's General Li and the others. A cry of surprise came from behind. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and a dozen soldiers all looked in the same direction in the plaza. Following the direction of the voice, Wang Chong saw a familiar figure on the other side of the plaza. He looked past the villagers of Wuxiang village. His 2-meter-tall body was like an iron tower as he stood on the plaza, emitting a powerful aura. The giant longsword in the man's hand was as tall as a person, and it looked incomparably terrifying. Even in the territory of Wuxiang village, this person stood out like a crane among chickens, and was extremely eye-catching. No one could block his radiance. Although all the people of Wuxiang village had surrounded him, they were separated by a few meters, clearly showing their fear of this giant general. Invincible Great General Li Sai. After losing contact with him for many days, Wang Chong finally saw his most beloved general deep in the heart of Wuxiang village. His breathing was very messy, and there were many wounds on his body, but his body was still so straight and tall, like a majestic mountain range. It was as if as long as he didn't want to fall, nothing in this world could defeat him. Generally, Gao Feng and Nie Feng had expressions of unease and worry when they saw Li Sai. They hurriedly rushed toward the plaza. Wang Chong didn't stop them, nor did he hurry to follow them. Instead, he frowned slightly. Li Sai's ability was unquestionable. The invincible great general was enough to prove his ability, even when he was insignificant. This sort of person was not someone an ordinary person could compare to. Moreover, after his experience in the War of the Southwest, Li Sai had become even steadier, more dependable, and stronger. This was also why Wang Chong was willing to give him the mission of subduing the Wuxiang people. But Wang Chong had said that the goal of this mission was to subdue the people of Wuxiang, not to kill or suppress them. Thus he was strictly forbidden from using weapons. But now, Li Sai had not only used the unstoppable Wuxia steel weapon that Wang Chong had forged for him. His body was also covered in wounds, and his aura was in disarray. Wang Chong truly found it hard to imagine just what sort of opponent could force Li Sai, who was using all his strength with his Wuxia steel weapon, into such a state. It had to be known that the last time Li Sai had used his full strength, he had single-handedly exterminated the Black Dragon Bandit, which had occupied the Silk Road, and had established its base in Qixi. Even its boss Black Dragon Zhao had been killed. But now Li Sai was being suppressed. Whoosh! With a wave of his robe, Wang Chong immediately strode toward the plaza. There was no one around to stop him. Wang Chong was the person the clan leader wanted to see, so no one would try to cause trouble at a time like this. Marquis. Surrounded by Wuxiang people, Li Sai held his sword with both hands. His resolute face was slightly haggard, and his mountainous physique slightly trembled as he breathed. It was clear that he had consumed a great deal of energy. Wang Chong solemnly nodded, his gaze quickly falling on the ground around Li Sai. Li Sai had led a group of 20-some people, but now only 7 or 8 were lying around him, heavily injured. The rest had all disappeared. Gao Feng and Nie Yin had rushed over, and were already using the medicine of the army to treat them, but it was clear that their injuries were not light. Marquis. Upon seeing Wang Chong, one soldier after another opened their eyes and called out in low voices, expressions of extreme pain on their faces. Wang Chong nodded and waved his hand, indicating that they should rest. Marquis, I'm sorry. I did my best, but the mission still failed. For now, I can only protect them. Li Sai's face was covered in shame, and for the first time, he lowered his proud head. This mission had been far more difficult than he had imagined. Li Sai had never expected that there would be so many rare experts hidden in such a small, inconspicuous village in the northwest. This trifling expedition mission was even more difficult than the War of the Southwest against the more than 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi, Yusang army. I know. I don't blame you. Leave the rest to me. Wang Chong waved his hand. That calamity in his memories had not yet occurred, and Wuxiang village had not yet been attacked by the otherworldly invaders. This was still that conservative and xenophobic village, but it was still a legend. Wang Chong had to admit that his thinking had been too simple. The Wuxiang cavalry, hailed as the future #1 force in the world, were not so easy to subdue. I still have to do it myself. Wang Chong mentally sighed and turned his head to face Li Sai. In his last life, he had been the one who had personally subdued the Wuxiang cavalry. In this life, he would probably have to do it himself. It seemed like even a future invincible great general like Li Sai would not be able to replace him. You are the young marquis that this warrior speaks of? Before Wang Chong could speak, an elderly and deep voice rang out in his ear. Wang Chong opened his eyes and saw that across from Li Sai were a group of stern-faced, plain-robed elders. These elders were all 40 or 50 years old, and some of them had gray hair at their temples. They were at least 70 or 80 years old. But even so, these elders showed no signs of age. Wang Chong sensed a frightening aura from them, one that no ordinary elder could possess. Huang Boshan's ability to control rocks and transform into a 30-meter-tall stone general was already quite formidable in Wang Chong's view. But compared to these elders, he was clearly not just one level lower. Some of these elders exuded an aura that even made Wang Chong feel pressured. What a powerful cultivation! The Imperial Martial Realm. They're all at the Imperial Martial Realm at the very least. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. Above the true martial realm was the profound martial realm, and above the profound martial realm was the Imperial Martial Realm. Wang Chong himself was an Imperial martial expert, but these elders standing across from Li Sai were all experts at the Imperial Martial Realm or above. Some of these elders exuded an aura that even shocked Wang Chong. This was no longer the strength of the Imperial Martial Realm, but the Saint Martial Realm at the very least. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, not even Wang Chong would have dared to believe that an obscure valley in the northwest of the Tang dynasty was actually hiding such a strength. 2 Saint Martial Realm, 7 Imperial Martial Realm. This is the strength of Wuxiang village before the calamity. It truly is powerful. And I'm afraid that this is only the tip of the iceberg for Wuxiang village. Wang Chang's eyes were bright as these thoughts flashed through his mind. At this moment, even he couldn't help but sigh. Wang Chong had never had the chance to witness the strength of Wuxiang village before the calamity. As the commander of the world's #1 Wuxiang cavalry, this was truly a pity. But the more this was so, the more Wang Chong had a thought in his mind. No matter what, he had to protect Wuxiang village and prevent the tragedy of the otherworldly invaders from repeating itself. This powerful strength should be used in a better place. They should have a larger stage, not die here alone and helpless. Buzz! Just as this thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, a familiar voice resounded in his mind. Every marshal needs soldiers, just like how soldiers need leaders. This is the marshal's summon. Within 3 days, completely recruit the unruly Wuxiang people, and recruit the first batch of Wuxiang cavalry. Host will receive a reward of 600 points of destiny energy. Upon hearing the familiar voice of the Stone of Destiny in his mind, Wang Chong's expression instantly changed. Wang Chong hadn't expected to hear the Stone of Destiny's voice at a time like this. Moreover, from the information revealed by the Stone of Destiny, his mission to recruit the Wuxiang people had suddenly become a one-off mission, and it was only for 3 days. It must have been because we sent Li Sai and clashed with them, causing the Wuxiang chief and elders to feel hostility toward us. That's why this happened. Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. The Stone of Destiny would never issue a mission for no reason. Moreover, after experiencing the War of the Southwest, Wang Chong had gradually come to realize that rather than saying that the Stone of Destiny was issuing missions, it was more like the Stone of Destiny was using this method to give him a kind reminder. There was no question that the Wuxiang people's recruitment mission had encountered a problem. This is troublesome. Wang Chong's heart sank, but he did not reveal any of it on his face. However, the more difficult the mission, the more determined Wang Chong became. No matter what, he had to subdue the Wuxiang people. Correct, this one is. Wang Chong raised his head, his expression calm and devoid of fear. Buzz! The mood on the plaza instantly changed at Wang Chong's words. The Wuxiang village elders glanced at each other, frowning as they realized that this was a thorny problem. Wuxiang village was remote and surrounded by mountains. Not even bandits and brigands were willing to enter this place, let alone other people. But no matter how ignorant and inexperienced the people of Wuxiang were, even they knew that the land belonged to the king. As long as they lived in the Central Plains, they would be bound by the imperial authority of the secular world. To put it simply, the people of Wuxiang had to obey the orders of the imperial court. They had already noticed the words young marquis when they had obtained the token, but they had never imagined that this noble and lofty marquis of the secular world would personally appear before them. No matter how fierce the Wuxiang people were, they knew that this youth of 16 or 17 could not be touched. Chapter 703. Marquis, to think that you would grace us with your presence. Forgive us for not coming out to greet you. This one is Wu Jiumei, an elder of Wuxiang village. There must have been a small misunderstanding in this matter. Our villagers and Marquis' subordinates had a small conflict. We tried to dissuade them time and time again, but Marquis' subordinates refused to listen and insisted on barging into the village. We had no choice but to take action. But even so, we've already shown mercy. Marquis' subordinates are temporarily imprisoned in the village, and we haven't done anything to them. In a moment, I will have them hand over Marquis' subordinates. The speaker was an elder in his 70s or 80s. His temples were grizzled and his hair was silver, but his spirit was hale and hearty. His expression was solemn, and his words exuded a dignified aura. It was clear that he had an extraordinary status in the village. Before Wang Chong could speak, Li Sai behind him gave a long sigh of relief. This was the first time he had heard of the whereabouts of his missing subordinates. Marquis, these people are very powerful. If I hadn't taken out my Wuxia steel sword, I would have been captured by them. Marquis, you must not be careless. Li Sai suddenly took a few steps forward and whispered into Wang Chong's ear. I know. Have a good rest first. Wang Chong didn't even turn his head as he spoke in a light and breezy voice. Old sir, this one bears no ill will. The imperial court is in trouble in the desolate border, and the smoke of war is rising in all directions. It is time to mobilize the army. As the saying goes, everyone has a responsibility for the rise and fall of the world. The people of Wuxiang are brave and skilled in battle, and this one just happens to be building a city in Wuxiang. So I sent my subordinates to Wuxiang to recruit brave soldiers. If we can defend the desolate border and protect the people of the Central Plains, we will contribute to the country and the people. I believe that this will be a glorious matter for the people of Wuxiang. Wang Chong went straight to the point and stated his intentions. If he wanted to subdue Wuxiang's people, using trickery or schemes would only backfire on him. He might as well state his intentions directly. In fact, now that things had developed to this point, Wuxiang's people probably already knew why he was here. If he were to be secretive at this time, he would be looked down upon. Sure enough, upon hearing Wang Chong's words, Wu Jiumei and the other elders of Wuxiang village appeared to be completely unsurprised, clearly having anticipated his intentions. It is our Wuxiang village's honor to receive Marquis's favor. It's just that our Wuxiang village has always been isolated from the rest of the world, and is used to peace. I'm afraid it's not suitable for war. Wu Jiumei immediately rejected Wang Chong's request. Moreover, our Wuxiang village is just a bunch of mountain villagers with limited abilities. How can we help Marquis conquer the world? I'm afraid that we will not be able to live up to Marquis's expectations. Marquis should look for someone else. The world is vast, and there are bound to be people more suited to Marquis's vision than our Wuxiang village. That's right, Marquis should look for someone else. The other elders also chimed in. Wuxiang village had lived in seclusion in the mountains for nearly 1,000 years, living a peaceful and aloof life. This had already become a tradition that no one could break. So how could it be easily changed just because of a few words from Wang Chong? Elder is too modest. If even the Wuxiang village's abilities are limited, then I'm afraid that no one else in the world is capable. My subordinates are all seasoned warriors, elites who can fight against 100 on the battlefield. But when they arrived at Wuxiang village, they were immediately captured by the warriors of the village. The Wuxiang village is definitely the most valiant warriors in the world. If we can obtain the help of the Wuxiang village, the Tang dynasty will definitely be able to pacify the borders and bring peace to the people. We will also be able to protect more people from the chaos of war. Moreover, the imperial court has always treated warriors who can fight for the country generously. I can also promise you that as long as Wuxiang village responds to my recruitment, I will bestow upon Wuxiang village a large amount of gold, silver, and resources. Wang Chong sincerely said. With the Wang clan's current influence and power, as long as Wang Chong was willing, he could bestow upon Wuxiang village unimaginable wealth, status, and reputation. On the other side, Wu Jiumei and the other village elders all had wonderful expressions on their faces. If Wang Chong's words had been a little more forceful, they would have immediately refused. But Wang Chong's words were extremely tactful, and his words were filled with praise and reverence for the Wuxiang village. This left everyone speechless. And most frightening of all was that Wang Chong's subordinates had truly been wounded by the villagers. Wu Jiumei had never imagined that these soldiers lying on the ground were elites who could fight against 100 soldiers. This, Wu Jiumei and the other elders glanced at each other, their expressions hesitant, momentarily at a loss for words. The young Marquis's eloquence is worthy of this old man's admiration, but I advise Marquis to stop wasting his breath in scheming. Just when all the elders were stumped by Wang Chong, a voice came from a stone house deep within Wuxiang village. This is. Wang Chong's eyes widened, as if this familiar voice had evoked something in his mind. It was this voice that had let him in during his battle with Huang Batian outside the village. But now that he was in the village, Wang Chong could no longer hear this voice. Chief. As Wang Chong was thinking, he suddenly heard Wu Jiumei's respectful voice. The Wuxiang village elders turned their heads and bowed in the same direction, expressions of subservience and respect on their faces. Wang Chong turned his head in that direction, and saw a hunchbacked white-haired elder dressed in linen, leaning on a wisteria cane, as he slowly walked out of a stone house several dozen zhang away. Wang Chong hadn't paid much attention at first, but after a single glance, Wang Chong couldn't help but widen his eyes. The white-haired elder's footsteps were extremely slow, but each step seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 jun, giving off an intense impression. His footsteps did not seem to be on the ground, but on space itself, treading into the hearts of everyone present. He gave off an unfathomable and unrivaled aura, and at such a close distance, even if Wang Chong focused his eyes, he still wouldn't be able to make out the elder's face. The white-haired elder seemed neither too close nor too far, not too blurry, but also impossible to see too clearly. And what made Wang Chong most apprehensive was that he couldn't sense this elder's aura. It was like this elder was just a shadow that didn't exist at all. This made Wang Chong's heart shiver. If he were just an ordinary person, it would be fine. But Wang Chong had long since broken into the imperial martial realm and cultivated the great yin-yang heaven creation art. There was almost no martial artist on the same level as him who was a match for him. Even an expert like Huang Batian, who had cultivated the stone general to a superb level, had been powerless against Wang Chong, completely toyed with in the palm of his hand. But now, in front of this ordinary white-haired elder, Wang Chong couldn't even sense his aura. This was simply inconceivable. Saint Martial Realm. Wang Chong's pupils constricted as a thought flashed through his mind. He wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. Wang Chong had felt it before, from Zhangqiu Jinxiong, Huashu Wuzong, Duan Gichuan, and the other great generals. And as the former Grand Marshal of the world, a supreme Saint Martial expert, Wang Chong couldn't be more familiar with the aura of someone on the same level as him. How could this be? At this moment, Wang Chong's mind was in turmoil. He had never imagined that this tiny Wuxiang village would be hiding an expert of the great general level. Any country or faction that possessed an expert of the great general level would assuredly have a massive rise in influence and status, instantly becoming an influential figure among the other countries. For such an expert to be hidden in Wuxiang village was a massive blow to Wang Chong. Wang Chong suddenly understood why the otherworldly invaders had been so heavily wounded when they had charged into Wuxiang village. An expert of the great general level leading several Saint Martial experts, many imperial martial experts, and 50 to 60,000 true martial and profound martial realm villagers. Wuxiang village had the strength of a regular army, and it was on the level of a small protectorate. This was the first time Wang Chong had seen the true resources of Wuxiang village. However, Wang Chong still sensed a hint of disharmony. Although the white-haired elder had done his best to hide it, Wang Chong had still sensed an abnormal ripple of chaos from his body. It seems that not even he was able to escape that fate. Wang Chong thought of something, and immediately understood. "Elder, my apologies for my lack of manners." Wang Chong clasped his hands and respectfully bowed to the Wuxiang village chief. Elders were respected, and this person was as old as Wang Chong's grandfather. The white-haired elder's eyes flashed at Wang Chong's respectful attitude, but his stern face did not soften in the slightest. For young master to be made a marquis at such a young age is truly a dragon among men, leaving a deep impression on others. However, a country has its laws and a clan has its rules, and Wuxiang village also has its own rules. All the villagers of Wuxiang village are not to lightly leave the village and involve themselves in the struggles of the outside world. This is a rule set down by our ancestors. Marquis, there's no need to waste your efforts. Please return. The white-haired elder sternly said as he walked toward the group. His steps seemed slow, but they were actually fast. When he first spoke, he was still several dozen zhang away, but by the time he finished speaking, he was only 10 zhang from Wang Chong's group. "Elder. Marquis, please return." The white-haired elder's expression was inflexible and inflexible. With these words, he loosened his hand and gestured toward the exit of the village, clearly intending to send the guest away, not giving Wang Chong a chance to speak. Buzz. Chapter 704. In the end, Wang Chong was a marquis of the imperial court and a disciple of the Son of Heaven bestowed upon him by the Holy Emperor. Wuxiang resided in Wang Chong's territory and was under Wang Chong's jurisdiction, so it was reasonable for Wang Chong to respond to the recruitment. But no one had expected Wuxiang village to be so unreasonable. Without any room for negotiation, they had directly rejected the proposal. And when they thought about how their soldiers had been injured, their complexions turned even more unsightly. It had to be known that someone of Wang Chong's status was completely capable of mobilizing an army to besiege Wuxiang village. Impudent. Gao Feng was the first to stand up and defend Wang Chong. With Wang Chong's current status, even the patriarchs of those powerful clans that had been operating in the capital for more than 100 years had to treat him with the utmost courtesy. These people from Wuxiang village were going too far. Gao Feng. Wang Chong extended a palm and stopped Gao Feng. He had come to recruit the people of Wuxiang village, not to start a feud. And there was one thing that the Wuxiang village chief was probably not lying about. Wuxiang village truly did have its own traditions that forbade anyone from leaving the village to involve the outside world. Otherwise, Wuxiang village wouldn't have remained hidden for nearly 1,000 years, waiting until now. Wang Chong had heard of this rule from Feng Xiaoyan, so he was well aware of it. However, rules were dead while people were alive. If the rules were truly unchangeable, he would never be able to recruit 5,000 Wuxiang soldiers and become the highest commander of the famous Wuxiang cavalry. No matter what the Wuxiang village chief said, Wang Chong still believed that he had a way to change their traditions and accept the recruitment. Grandfather, why are you here? In the blink of an eye, just when the atmosphere was at its deadliest, a familiar, childish voice suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Wang Chong turned his head around and saw a petite girl at the edge of the square. Her footsteps were light and agile like a raccoon. She was carrying a large metal box that was even taller than her, and was skipping toward the square. Big brother, you're here too? The little girl bounced around and finally noticed Wang Chong, who was opposite the white-haired old man. Her face was filled with surprise. Buzz! With the appearance of the little girl, with just a few words, the originally stiff atmosphere immediately relaxed and became much more relaxed. This child, the white-haired old man laughed wanly. His originally stern, inflexible, and aloof expression instantly melted like ice, and he could no longer maintain it. Xiao Yan. As the white-haired old man spoke, he waved his hand towards the distance. Looking at the time, it should be about time. Wang Chong glanced at the little girl who appeared at the edge of the square and smiled, as if he had already expected this scene. Grandfather, I forgot to tell you. This is a friend I met outside. They gave me a big box of Wujian grass. Haha. Then I can stay in the village for a few days and play with my luoluo. The little girl bounced around like a raccoon and slipped to the white-haired old man's feet in a flash. She hugged his thigh and rubbed it against his leg like a kitten, making the white-haired old man not know whether to laugh or cry. By the way, big brother, this box of yours is not bad. I gave the Wujian grass to the elder and kept this box. It's perfect for my luoluo to make a nest. The little girl turned her head to look at Wang Chong said. Hee as long as you like it. Wang Chong smiled. Xiao Yin, you've been busy all day. Are you tired? Grandaunt prepared some snacks. They're on the table. Take them. Little fellow, don't always care about the fox. Remember to practice your martial arts. That the group of chief of Wuxiang looked at the little girl and greeted her one after another. Their eyes were full of love and pampering. Their demeanor and tone were completely different from before, when they were in front of Wang Chong and the others. Got it, got it. The little girl pouted and waved her hand impatiently. Her eyes turned and soon fell on Wang Chong on the other side. By the way, big brother, have you found your friends? I found them. Wang Chong nodded with a smile and glanced at Li Sai and the others behind him. So it's them. The little girl frowned slightly, but soon became happy. It's good that you found them. Grandfather, they're all my friends. You can't bully them. Big brother, I won't chat with you anymore. I'm going to look for my luoluo. The little girl carried her big iron box on her back. Without saying anything, she ran across the square like a wisp of smoke, heading to the other end of the square in high spirits. Looking at the little girl's back and the huge iron box, the white-haired old man and the group of elders smiled helplessly. However, after the little girl's antics, they couldn't keep a cold face anymore. Marquis, Xiaoyan has never been very willing to get close to outsiders. Since she's willing to speak up for you, at least your character is not bad, and you're not evil people. It's just that Wushang village has its own rules, which were set by the ancestors. Even if I'm the chief, I can't disobey them. I hope that Marquis can understand this. It's not that Wushang village is unwilling to help. So Marquis, please go back. The white-haired old man said. This time his tone was much gentler. However, the meaning he expressed was not the slightest bit different from the first time. Li Sai, Gao Feng, and Nie Yin looked at Wang Chong. Wushang village would definitely not respond to the recruitment. Everything now depended on how Wang Chong would deal with it. Haha, old mister, since that's the case, I can't force you. However, it's already late and Wushang village is surrounded by mountains. There are towering mountains and steep cliffs everywhere. One misstep, and you'll fall into a bottomless abyss. Can you let me stay here for a while and leave tomorrow? Wang Chong looked up at the gradually darkening sky and said, This, the white-haired old man frowned slightly. He instinctively wanted to refuse, but when he thought of the little girl he hesitated. All right, but you have to leave tomorrow morning. Ninth Elder, take them to the village to rest and settle down. When they leave at dawn tomorrow, release their subordinates as well. Yes, Chief. Wu Jumei solemnly nodded, and then turned to Wang Chong. Everyone please follow me. But only for one night. After one night, you must all leave no matter what. Wang Chong nodded but his feet did not move. Old mister, I know that you have already made up your mind, and will not easily change it. I also know that no matter what I say, you will not easily believe me. However, I still have a word of advice. I hope that old mister will listen to it. Oh, the white-haired Wushang chief frowned, a look of confusion on his face. Even Wu Jumei stopped. He didn't understand what this young marquis of the Tang dynasty was trying to do. This was especially true now that the chief had clearly refused him. Don't eat rock salt. After saying this, Wang Chong led Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nie Yin, and the others into the distance. The white-haired and bearded chief of Wushang village was left behind. His body trembled slightly as he looked at Wang Chong's back with a thoughtful look in his eyes. The sky gradually darkened and stars filled the sky. In a few stone houses at the edge of Wushang village, Wang Chong, Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nie Yin, and a group of guards from various aristocratic families gathered together. Marquis, what should we do? We have to leave at daybreak. Are we really going to give up just like that? In the stone house, Gao Feng suddenly broke the silence. Although the people of Wushang village are very unruly and difficult to subdue, they are not easy to deal with. But if we can really recruit them, it will indeed be a very powerful force. Nie Yin also said from the side, a thoughtful look on his face. Although the people of Wushang village were very xenophobic and completely indifferent to the summons of the imperial court, even a fierce general like Li Sai had almost died in Wushang village. Frankly speaking, this was also a testament to the strength of Wushang village. Such a hidden village that was not coveted by any faction was simply a paradise for recruiting elite soldiers. It would be a pity to let it go like this. After staying in Wushang village for a while, Nie Yan's mind was filled with scenes of the people of Wushang village wielding giant boulders weighing several thousand jin, or even several thousand jin. Such a spectacular scene, besides a place like Wushang village, would be difficult to see anywhere else. I'm sorry, Marquis. I messed up this mission. I failed Marquis's trust. Li Sai lowered his head, his face full of shame. This 2-meter-tall, 8-foot-tall man rarely yielded to others, but at this moment, he lowered his arrogant head in front of Wang Chong and a group of elite guards. The recruitment of soldiers is a very small matter. When Li Sai left the capital, he was also full of ambition and promised Wang Chong that he would definitely complete the mission. A man's promise was worth 1,000 gold, but at this moment, he had undoubtedly messed up. Ever since he received Wang Chong's summon, left biting, and followed Wang Chong all the way to war, whether it was to suppress the Black Dragon Gang, set foot on the Uzum Plateau, spread the plague, or set fire to the granary, cutting off the retreat of Mengshi Zhao. No matter how difficult the mission, Li Sai did his best to complete it. But this time, in this unknown Wushang village, Li Sai stumbled for the first time. Not only did he not complete the mission, but even half of the soldiers under him were captured. Even though he took out the indestructible Wuxia steel weapon, in the end, he was still no match for the people of Wushang. Haha, Sai, don't blame yourself. I know you have done your best. The group sat on the ground, and Wang Chong patted Li Sai's broad, tall, and imposing back, comforting him, his expression completely unconcerned. Chapter 705. Buzz. The moment Wang Chong spoke, everyone trembled and raised their heads to look at Wang Chong. Even Li Sai turned to Wang Chong, a look of disbelief on his face. Anyone from the capital knew that the Lord Zhangqiu Wang Chong spoke of was the newly promoted Minister of War, Zhangqiu Jinxiong. He also had another title, the Protector General of the Annan Protectorate, or perhaps the Tiger of the Empire, which was better known to others. This name not only represented Zhangqiu Jinxiong's illustrious reputation and prestige, but also his strength as a top-class imperial great general that countless people in the world could only look up to. All imperial great generals were supreme experts at the peak of the Saint Martial realm. Although Li Sai was confident, he also knew that there was still a significant gap between him and the Minister of War, the Tiger of the Empire. But Wang Chong had actually said that even if Zhangqiu Jinxiong were to personally come here, he would still be met with a crushing defeat. Haha, we should all have a feeling. That's right. That Wushang village chief is a Saint Martial expert on the same level as Zhangqiu Jinxiong. Given his strength and the many elders and villagers of Wushang, even if Zhangqiu Jinxiong personally came here, he would still be met with a crushing defeat. Much less us. Wang Chong indifferently said as he sat on the ground, feeling the chill of the stone building beneath him. Bang! Wang Chong's nonchalant words were like a stone stirring 1,000 ripples, but they immediately set off a storm in the ears of the crowd. Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and the rest of the guards widened their eyes in shock. Although Li Sai's reaction was not as obvious as the others, he was still as shocked as ever. A Saint Martial expert? How could this be? That white-bearded old man? He can't even walk. Everyone's mind was in a mess, but no one doubted Wang Chong's words. In this matter, Wang Chong's judgment would never be wrong. Frankly speaking, the people of Wushang were stubborn. Not only did they not respond to the imperial court summons, they even took the initiative to attack the imperial court soldiers. In the beginning, everyone was indeed very angry, and they even thought of leading an army to attack Wushang village. But at this time, when they heard that Wushang village actually had a Saint Martial realm expert guarding it, how could they dare to have the slightest bit of such thoughts? Marquis, where did these Wushang people come from? How can an ordinary village be so powerful? Gao Feng's eyelids twitched, and he couldn't help but ask this question. I also want to know the answer. Wang Chong looked at the starry sky outside the window, a glimmer of light flashing in his eyes. There were many secrets regarding Wushang village. It was one thing for the Wushang to be able to traverse the mountains, as if they were flying. After all, this place truly was surrounded by precipitous cliffs, and it wasn't strange for them to develop skills after living here for so long. But outside the village, the formations and psychic energy attacks unleashed by those Wushang elders called Elder Du and Elder Feng were not something that could be explained away by mountains and precipitous valleys. And before Wang Chong stepped into Wushang village, he did not expect that the chief of Wushang village was actually a Saint Martial expert. There were many secrets that Wang Chong did not know in his previous life. There was no doubt that in his previous life, he would not have had the opportunity to explore these secrets. But now that everything had been redone, all the elders and core members of the chief of Wushang village were still alive, and even Feng Xiaoyan had not grown into the naughty and barbaric girl from his previous life. He could finally explore Wushang village, but before that, the most important thing was to change the opinion of the chief of Wushang village and recruit the first batch of soldiers from Wushang village. Leave this matter to me. You all go and have a good rest. Wang Chong said, then quickly turned around and fell into deep thought. Rome was not built in a single day, and the traditions of Wuxiang village could not be changed overnight, especially before the calamity had even occurred. But no matter how difficult it was, Wang Chong would find a way to change it. As the former commander of the Wuxiang people, at this time, he needed the help of the world-famous Wuxiang Iron Cavalry. If there are no accidents, that thing should happen very soon. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind. He slowly raised his head and looked at the sky. High up in the sky, a crescent moon hung alone. This kind of night was all too common in Wuxiang village. But if one looked carefully, one would find that the crescent moon in the sky was changing little by little. The crescent moon was becoming thinner and fainter at a speed visible to the naked eye. And as the crescent moon changed, the stars in the sky and the whole of Wuxiang village also quickly became dim. Everything seemed to be covered by layers of black gauze. This was a lunar eclipse. Wang Chong clearly remembered that before the catastrophe, an incident had occurred in Wuxiang village. Many of the elders and villagers of Wuxiang village had suddenly died one night. On that night, at least 2,000 or 3,000 Wuxiang villagers had died. Even Fang Xiaoyan's grandfather, the white-haired elder that Wang Chong had seen during the day, had been heavily injured in that incident. Half his body had been paralyzed, and his strength had plummeted. The great-uncle Jiao that Fang Xiaoyan spoke of, Wu Jiumei, had also died in that incident. If it weren't for this, Wuxiang village wouldn't have suffered so many losses and suffered so many casualties. It would have been fine if Wang Chong had not seen him during the day, but now that he knew that this white-haired elder was a peak Saint martial expert on the same level as imperial great generals like Zhangqiu Jinqiong, Geshu Han, and Fomin Linta, Wang Chong could not allow this incident to occur. Every peak Saint martial expert was a precious treasure to the Tang dynasty. Nothing could be allowed to happen to them. If he allowed a peak Saint martial expert like Wuxiang village chief to die before his eyes, it would be a deep regret for Wang Chong. There wasn't much information left behind about that incident. All Wang Chong knew was that it had happened during a lunar eclipse, when the world was at its most impure and cloudy. This was also why Wang Chong had gone to the Bureau of Rights and the Bureau of Agriculture to calculate this before leaving the capital. In the 10 years before and after the calamity, the Tang dynasty experienced a total of 3 lunar eclipses. One was 5 years ago, one was 3 months after the calamity, and the last one is now. If there are no accidents, this is the most likely time for that incident. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. While Wang Chong was thinking, a scream came from outside the room, shattering the peace of Wuxiang village. Elder Du! Someone hurry! The quiet Wuxiang village suddenly fell into chaos. Before he could finish speaking, another scream came from another part of Wuxiang village. Wang Chong paled, and like an arrow released from a bow, he bolted out of the room without a second thought. Li Sai, Gao Feng, Nie Yen, and everyone else, come with me. Bring the things I asked you to prepare. Wang Chong's voice was still echoing through the room, but he had already disappeared. The night in Wuxiang village was extremely quiet. This place was isolated from the rest of the world and surrounded by mountains. Everyone maintained the habit of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. Thus, when Wang Chong and the others entered the stone houses to rest, they could hear nothing from outside. But right now Wuxiang village was in complete turmoil. Wang Chong stood on the plaza of Wuxiang village. The pitch-black Wuxiang village was now beginning to be illuminated. At the start, Wang Chong had only heard 1 or 2 screams, but now, he could hear them everywhere. The wailing of women and the crying of children, as well as the voices of those people who had been woken up by the screams and rushed out of their houses to investigate and help, were all coming from every direction. It's really happening. The wind howled. Wang Chong raised his head to look at the sky. The moon had completely disappeared, and the land was covered in darkness. In that instant, Wang Chong's hair danced wildly, and his heart was in a mess. Even though he had long heard of the huge incident that had happened in Wuxiang village, he only knew how serious it was after experiencing it himself. It was no longer a problem of 1 or 2 people, nor was it a problem of 100 or 200 people. It was a matter of 2 or 3,000 people dying at the same time. As the former commander-in-chief of the Wuxiang tribe, it would have been fine if he hadn't experienced it personally. But now that he was in Wuxiang village, he couldn't just sit back and watch this happen. After all, although the Wuxiang tribe was a little arrogant, in this catastrophe, they were the most courageous, loyal, and respectable troops in the entire world. The 5,000 Wuxiang Iron Cavalry had fought to the last man, and none of them had retreated. Until the very last moment, they had fought to the death against the foreign invaders, defending this land and this divine continent. They were the best warriors, the most loyal troops. This was also the reason why Wang Chong had to subdue them no matter what. Although the Wuxiang tribe were unruly, xenophobic, difficult to tame, and had deep-rooted traditions, once they were subdued, they were the most reliable warriors. A wild horse is hard to tame. This was a principle that every cavalry soldier understood. Great Uncle Jiao. Suddenly, a heart-wrenching cry reached his ears. Wang Chong's expression changed, and he flew out without thinking, flying in the direction of the sound. The wind howled on both sides, and in the dark night, countless stone houses flew in 2 directions. In that instant, many thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind. In all of Wuxiang village, there was only one person who was called Great Uncle Jiao, and that was the Wu Jiumei he had seen during the day. In Wuxiang village, Wu Jiumei was the elder with the highest seniority, apart from the chief. Although he was old-fashioned, this Great Uncle Jiao doted on Fang Xiaoyan very much. Thus, apart from her grandfather, Fang Xiaoyan's Great Uncle Jiao's death had been the saddest and most regretful. And for a very long time after that, she still couldn't get over it. On the day of Great Uncle Jiao's death, Fang Xiaoyan would be especially depressed and sad, and her mood would be gloomy the entire day. Chapter 706. Wang Chong's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he approached the place where the scream was coming from. From afar, Wang Chong saw a stone house. It was brightly lit, and there were many people from Wuxiang village surrounding it. Their faces were filled with anxiety. Who is it? It's the outsiders. What do you want to do? Leave now. Stop. Stop. Otherwise, don't blame us for being impolite. That when the villagers of Wuxiang saw Wang Chong from afar, they were already on their guard. Some of Wuxiang's men immediately stepped forward and shouted, hoping that Wang Chong would stop and keep his distance. It's too late. Wang Chong was secretly anxious. The people of Wuxiang village still maintained a high degree of vigilance and rejection of him. This was also the reason why Wang Chong did not mention this tragedy during the day, because no one would believe it. On the contrary, if things went wrong, the people of Wuxiang might even think that he was cursing them, and might even chase him out on the spot. However, this matter was different. Perhaps even Wuxiang himself did not know how many people they would lose tonight. Wuxiang was too strong. Even people like Gao Feng and Nie Yan, who had fought with him on the battlefield, were shocked by their strength. However, Wang Chong knew very well that Wuxiang's strength came with a price. On the surface, they were also suffering from flaws and pain that ordinary people didn't know about. This kind of flaw would be fine under normal circumstances, but it would manifest itself during the night of a lunar eclipse. This was also the Achilles heel of the Wuxiang people. Out of the way! Wang Chong's eyes flashed with a cold light. Before he could say anything, he flicked his wrist, and a massive wave of stellar energy erupted from Wang Chong's body, forming a vortex dozens of meters wide. Boom! Before the villagers of Wuxiang could even get close, when they were still several feet away, they were all sent flying by an invisible force. Impudent! A stern shout came from the door of the stone house. In the depths of the darkness, the old chief of Wuxiang, whom Wang Chong had met during the day, suddenly dashed out with an ashen face. Along with him, there were also 5 small swords floating in the air. Buzz! The 5 small swords were only the size of a thumb. They floated in the air, looking as light as a feather. However, the feeling they gave off was exactly the opposite. Each of the swords was extremely powerful, and the aura they emitted was as heavy as a mountain. It made people feel as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Metal ability. Wang Chang's expression also changed slightly. Wuxiang village was surrounded by mountains, and it was very easy to cultivate earth-type abilities, especially rock-type abilities. Huang Boshan's stone general was one such example. But this old chief of Wuxiang was actually able to use metal-type abilities, and he seemed even stronger than Huang Boshan's stone general. In a place like Wuxiang village that was covered in rocks, it was truly inconceivable. It's the 5-element sword mountain. Wang Chong suddenly thought of something. It was true that the majority of the people of Wuxiang village had martial arts and abilities related to rock-type and earth-type abilities, but nothing was absolute. Wang Chong knew that there was an elder of Wuxiang village who cultivated metal-type abilities. His martial art was called the 5-element sword mountain, and it was extremely powerful. He was the only metal-type martial artist in Wuxiang village. The 5-element sword mountain was powerful, and its greatest characteristic was its 5 small swords. Each of these 5 small swords weighed over 1,000 catties, their weight boundlessly heavy. Unlike other sword daos, it did not rely on the sharpness of the sword itself, but on the weight of the sword. Any opponent who dared to underestimate it would be torn to shreds. Alas, this metal-type elder had been short-lived. Like the others, he had died in the Great Calamity. Wang Chong hadn't expected that he would run into this elder. "My apologies, I've offended you." Knowing the other party's identity, not only did Wang Chong not retreat, he even accelerated toward the metal element elder. Seeking death. In the shadows, the metal-type elder's eyes chilled. Elder Wu Jiumei was injured, so this was a critical moment. No matter how high Wang Chong's status was, he was still an outsider. If he dared to force his way in, he could not be blamed. Boom! There was a sharp sound in the void, and the 5 small swords suddenly trembled. The small swords that were only a few inches long were like giant whales in the sea. In an instant, they stirred up waves of air in the void, dragging out 5 huge vortexes. In that instant, the 5 small swords suddenly sped up, charging toward Wang Chong like 5 mountains. If Wang Chong were to be struck, he would probably be reduced to a bloody pulp in an instant. Wang Chong gave a slight snort at this sight, but he showed no fear. The 5 affinities sword mountain was indeed powerful. A small sword was equivalent to a mountain. However, no matter how powerful the 5 affinities sword mountain was, it could not compare to the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art, ranked first among the 10 great mystical arts of the Central Plains. Rumble! Wang Chong's robes flapped in the wind as he stepped forward. Instead of retreating, he shot forward like a cannonball. As he charged forward, Wang Chong pushed the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art to its limit. Bzzz. In the blink of an eye, an enormous attractive force exploded from Wang Chong's body. The air in a radius of 10 zhang began to twist and distort under the influence of this force field. Inside the stone house, the metal element elder only saw a flash before his eyes. In an instant, everything became distorted. Looking out from the house, everything became blurry. Not only that, even the 5 elemental small swords that he shot out were guided by an enormous and inconceivable force at this moment, causing them to change directions. Not good. The metal department elder paled. He knew that he had underestimated this young marquis of the Tang dynasty. Gathering his stellar energy, his dantian rumbled as he tried to change his attack and stop Wang Chong. But it was too late. Wang, a slender, white hand suddenly pressed against the dantian of the metal element elder's abdomen like a ghost. In a flash, the stellar energy in the metal element elder's body surged into Wang Chong's body like water breaking through a dam. But the domineering nature of the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art was not as simple as absorbing energy. The moment their bodies came into contact, the stellar energy in the metal element elder's body began to surge, and he instantly lost control of his stellar energy. And if a top-notch expert could not control the stellar energy in his body, it would mean that he would instantly fall from a top-notch expert to an ordinary person without the strength to truss a chicken. He would not be able to launch any effective counterattack. This was precisely the tyranny and terror of the great Yin-Yang heaven creation art. Once one got close, only death awaited them. or they would be sucked dry. Senior, I'm sorry. Wang Chong took control of the metal department elder's stellar energy, and with a fling of his hands, he tossed the metal department elder out of the stone house and over his head. With a thump, the metal department elder landed on the ground, simultaneously sealing off his meridians and stellar energy. If the great yin-yang heaven creation art did not want to kill, this was the most direct move. The demonic emperor old man had used this method to subdue countless top-class experts of the older generation in the martial arts world, humiliating them in this manner. Wang Chong had long ago practiced this move to perfection under the orders of the evil emperor. After capturing the metal department elder of Wuxiang village with a single move, Wang Chong flung up his robes and charged through the doorway, bursting into the stone house. Inside the simple and crude stone house, a turpentine oil lamp was lit, illuminating a circle of dim light. In the innermost corner of the room was a stone bed. On the stone bed, the chief of Wuxiang that Wang Chong had seen during the day, old Wu Jumei, was lying on the bed. His eyes were rolled back, and he was foaming at the mouth. His emaciated body was stiff, and his entire body was suffused with an abnormal black iron color. Beneath his skin, veins swelled and bulged, wriggling like earthworms. What are you doing? Marquis, haven't we come to an agreement? Stay here until daybreak and leave. The matters of the village have nothing to do with you. Let's go. Let's go. If you don't leave, don't blame us for being impolite. When the Wuxiang village enforcers and elders saw Wang Chong, their strength no less than Huang Boshan's, they immediately became wary and solemn. Although Wang Chong and the others had been allowed to stay in the village, the wariness that the people of Wuxiang felt towards outsiders was not so easily dispelled, especially at a time like this. Marquis, please conduct yourself with dignity. With these last words, the massive Wuxiang enforcers immediately tensed up like taut bowstrings as they prepared to attack. If Wang Chong made the slightest movement or dared to take another step forward, they would join hands and attack without hesitation. Whether we leave or not is a matter for tomorrow. But isn't Elder Wu the most important and urgent matter at hand? I don't think he can hold on for much longer. Wang Chong looked behind the enforcers as he spoke. The enforcers grimaced at Wang Chong's words and turned their heads. On the bed, Elder Wu Jumei's stiff body was suddenly convulsing and trembling. Not only that, but blood was flowing from the corners of his eyes and his mouth. This was a sign that his internal organs had been injured. How could this be? The enforcers paled in fright. No matter how slow they were to react, they could still tell that Wu Jumei was in a very bad state. Blood was flowing from his eyes, his head, and black blood was flowing from the corners of his mouth, his internal organs. These problems weren't a big deal for a young man, but Wu Jumei was already very old. If they didn't think of something, they would be in deep trouble. Wujian grass. Quick, use Wujian grass. We've already given it to Elder Wu, but it's useless. Elder Wu has been ill for a long time, and he's taken too much Wujian grass. These things are no longer effective on him. Then what can we do? Hurry and think of something. Think of something. Hurry and call the chief. Only the chief has a solution. I've already called him, but Bo Tian and the others still haven't returned. In an instant, the room was in chaos. At this time, no one cared about Wang Chong behind them. Wang, in the blink of an eye, just when the stone house was in chaos, and everyone was at a loss for what to do, a black shadow suddenly rushed to the stone bed, stretched out the index and middle fingers of his right hand, pried open the mouth of the black shadow, and pushed a pill into it. Bastard! Stop! What are you doing? Chapter 707. Don't panic. Elder Wu and I don't know each other, so why would I harm him? Furthermore, given Elder Wu's current condition, why would I harm him? Wang Chong clasped his hands behind his back, a smile on his lips as he swiftly retreated. There's no need for you to interfere in the affairs of our Wuxiang village. Speak. Just what kind of medicine did you give the elder? Before the other elders could speak, one of the protectors of Wuxiang village couldn't help but bellow angrily. His hands were clenched into fists, trembling slightly. It was clear that he was on the verge of losing control. Although the village had warned them time and time again that the other party was a marquis of the imperial court, and they couldn't act recklessly. But this time and time again it was really too much. If anything happens to the elder, don't blame us for being impolite. Another protector said angrily. Don't worry, nothing will happen to him. Wang Chong said indifferently, his expression carefree. Even when facing the enraged chief of Wuxiang, he was still calm and composed. However, his slightly trembling fingers, which had his back facing the crowd, revealed the true fluctuations in his heart. Something was wrong. Wang Chong clearly remembered that Wu Jiumei had only been injured in this incident. But now, Wu Jiumei's breathing was weak, and blood was flowing from the corners of his eyes and mouth. Moreover, it was black blood. This was a very bad sign. No matter what, this was not as simple as a serious injury. In the worst-case scenario, he might die. I hope that pill will work as usual. This thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he felt a little worried. He could sense that the events in Wuxiang village seemed to be a little different from his previous life. Wu Jiumei had only been seriously injured at first, but if things went wrong, he might even die in this incident. Things had already changed, and there were many things that he couldn't be sure of anymore. Just as he was feeling a little uneasy, an old and drawn-out voice suddenly rang out in the stone house. Hearing this voice, everyone's body trembled violently. One by one, they looked toward the stone bed. On the stone bed, Elder Wu Jiumei's eyes had turned white, and black blood flowed from the corners of his mouth and eyes, accompanied by white froth. Suddenly, the whites of his eyes slid down, revealing his slightly murky but pitch-black pupils. As he let out a long sigh, his original black iron-like skin faded away like a receding tide. First the face, then the neck and arms, then the entire torso and feet. A crimson color gradually emerged from Wu Jiumei's body. Not only that, Wu Jiumei's eyes swiveled, quickly noticing the Wuxiang village protectors and elders not far from the bed. Chongli, Yinwen. Wu Jiumei called out the names of several elders. Although his voice was faint, it was extremely clear. Elder. In the room, a few villagers who were serving at the side, serving water and towels, were overjoyed. They were the first to pounce on the stone bed. That's great. The elder is awake. The elder had woken up. A few moments later, Wu Jiumei rubbed his head and slowly sat up on the bed before everyone's shocked gazes. Shock. Incomparable shock. As they looked at Wu Jiumei, who acted as if nothing had happened, they turned to Wang Chong at the door, the shock in their eyes indescribable. In particular, the protectors who were filled with hostility toward Wang Chong had complicated expressions on their faces. Impossible. There can't be any medicine that can be so powerful. The elder Wu Jiumei called Yunwen suddenly strode over and grabbed Wu Jiumei's arm, which was hanging by the side of the stone bed. Wu Jiumei's pulse was very stable, and was gradually recovering, beating faster and faster, becoming more and more stable. Not only had it completely recovered, but it was also much calmer than Wu Jiumei's pulse had ever been. The elder Wu Jiumei called Yunwen abruptly turned his head to look at Wang Chong at the door, shock, astonishment, and an indescribable excitement in his eyes. Wang Chong only smiled and said nothing. Brother Jiao, how do you feel? How do your shoulders, neck, right leg, back, and organs feel? Does it hurt? Elder He Yunwen quickly turned around and tightly grasped Wu Jiumei's hand as he asked anxiously. Very good, it doesn't hurt. What's wrong? Wu Jiumei slowly moved his body as he asked in confusion. At first, he didn't understand why He Yunwen was asking this. But when he subconsciously said these words, he immediately sensed something and froze, his face full of astonishment. In an instant, the room fell into a deathly silence. Countless pairs of eyes looked in the same direction, and they were all extremely excited. Impossible. Although the people of Wuxiang village are powerful, every one of us will feel a dull pain from the age of 3. At the end of every month, or when the stars dim and the yin energy in the world is at its densest, the pain will flare up and our bodies will twitch. Many people don't even live past 50 before they die. The village once invited an arcane master, who said it was a problem with the feng shui of the village. Elder Wu is already 70 or 80 years old. His condition is more serious than anyone else in the village. How could he suddenly recover? Someone in the stone house muttered to himself, voicing the thoughts of everyone present. Those who arrived at Wuxiang village for the first time would only marvel at the great strength the Wuxiang people had trained in the mountains and precipitous ridges. But few knew the price of this strength. Every person in Wuxiang had to endure a kind of internal pain from the moment they were born. As they grew older, the pain would only grow more and more severe. Generation after generation, batch after batch, no one had ever been spared. The reason why Elder Wu's pain flared up so fiercely, even causing black blood to flow from the corner of his mouth, was related to his age and this kind of injury. In that instant just now, many people had thought he was going to die, but no one had imagined that he would actually recover in such a short time. Not only did he recover, even his messy pulse had calmed down. Elder Wu's injuries couldn't have healed for no reason at all. It could only be because of the pill Wang Chong had fed him. Shock, astonishment, disbelief, as well as deep excitement and desire. In that instant, all kinds of emotions flashed across the faces of everyone in the room. If Wang Chong's pill could be effective on someone of Elder Wu's age, then didn't that mean that the pill would be effective on everyone? At this moment, even the enmity in the hearts of Wuxiang village towards Wang Chong melted like ice. They looked towards Wang Chong as if he was their savior. Marquis, if you don't mind, can you tell me what pill you fed Elder Wu? He Yinwen asked, forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart. Wang Chong only smiled and didn't say much. He loosened his fingers and handed over the other pill. Wang Chong's painstaking efforts hadn't been in vain. He could clearly feel that the attitude of the Wuxiang villagers towards him had undergone an earth-shattering change. And all of this was because of the pill he had brought. Slap! Before He Yunwen could take the pill, a hand suddenly reached out and slapped the pill in Wang Chong's palm onto the ground. Elder, are you crazy? He's an outsider. How could he be so kind? How could he know how to cure the hidden illness of our Wuxiang villagers? This is a problem that the Wuxiang villagers haven't been able to solve for hundreds of years. How could an outsider solve it? This must be a coincidence. It must be because Elder had swallowed a large amount of Wujian grass. The medicinal properties of the Wujian grass had accumulated over the years and erupted at this time, curing Elder Wu's illness. A burly man in his 30s from Wuxiang village with a bright red scar on his left cheek suddenly shouted. His eyes were filled with malice as he stared at Wang Chong. It seemed that his hostility towards Wang Chong was deeper than anyone else's. It's him. Wang Chong didn't pay much attention at first, but when he saw the bright red scar on his left cheek, his heart stirred, and he suddenly remembered. Previously, when he was fighting with Qin Qiqing, there was a Wuxiang villager who was more ferocious and radical than anyone else. Even Qin Qiqing had a hard time controlling him. When Wang Chong had sent him flying, one of the rocks had slashed across his cheek, leaving a bloody scar. However, that person's gaze towards him had become even more ferocious. So Wang Chong had a deep impression of him and remembered it clearly. It seems that he's harboring a grudge because of that matter. Wang Chong understood. I've said what I needed to say and done what I needed to do. Since you don't believe me, then so be it. I just don't know if everyone will be like Elder Wu tonight, able to rely on the Wujian grass that has accumulated in their bodies over the years to recover without any treatment. As Wang Chong spoke, he turned and listened for a moment, then turned and left. Outside the stone house, screams rose and fell, growing more and more frequent. This night of the lunar eclipse was destined to be a sleepless night for Wuxiang village. Wait! Just as Wang Chong was about to leave, Elder Wu Jiumei heard the screams ringing in his ears and grimaced. He hurriedly extended a hand and called out to Wang Chong to stop. But at this moment, another unexpected thing happened. Thump! Not far from the stone bed, the middle-aged man from Wuxiang village, who had been loudly berating Wang Chong and had a bright red scar on his left cheek, suddenly fell to the ground without any warning. His teeth were tightly clenched, his face deathly pale, and he lay motionless on the ground. Wansher, what's wrong? This time, everyone was shocked, and they all rushed forward, squatting down and gathering around him. Not good, His hidden illness is acting up. His condition is very serious. His entire body is convulsing. Get a towel and separate his teeth. Don't let him bite his tongue. Elder, his pulse is growing weaker and weaker, and his body temperature is rapidly dropping. If this continues, I'm afraid. Things had happened too quickly, and everyone was in a state of panic. Yuanshu had fallen too quickly, too abruptly, and his illness was acting up too quickly. In just a few moments, his body had rapidly turned cold, and that black iron blue color was rapidly spreading over his entire body. This was not a situation that was unfamiliar to everyone. This was the sign of a chronic illness of all the Wuxiang villagers. And it was the most serious condition. Every Wuxiang villager would show these signs before they died. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.